everybody. Ooh, hello. The mics are working. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. We have a packed house, which is very exciting and doesn't happen too often. So it's very exciting for all of us. So I will get us moving along. I hereby call the Monday, August 12th, 2024 Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. Boom. Prior to this lovely moment, we had a workshop at 6 o'clock with the town attorney around kind of TIF 101 as well as conduit financing. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the July 22nd, 2024 meeting.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Second, Madam Chair.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. All right. First up is our manager's report. Mr. Sturgis.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good evening,
Good
Madam
morning.
Chair.
Good
Sorry,
morning
it's been
to
one of
you
those days. So good evening. Good to see everybody this evening. And this is probably going to be the most enjoyable manager's report I will ever give because it's all about celebration. So tonight, as you can see, we have a large audience, which is awesome, and that's because it's a celebration. Tonight we have the Cumberland North Yarmouth Little League 10U All-Stars, who eventually became the main All-Stars because they are champions for the state. And they are back from a recent trip to Rhode Island, where they played in our regional championship. And they are coached by head coach Miles Hunt, and assistant coach Jason Willett and Rob Miller are here this evening. Also with 13 of their fine players. These guys are the true boys of summer. Dimitri Smalley, we have Gavin Anderson, Cameron Lee, Cameron Hunt, Colby Miller, Bentley Douglas, Alex Bernier, Ivor McLean, Declan Devine, Jackson Williams, Mason Willett, Jack Salvatelli, and Jet Blymeyer. And they're all here this evening to receive awesome recognition. So, Coach, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, as you can see, we don't have all 13 with us. One is on a long delayed family trip to Spain, which was delayed probably at least 3 or 4 weeks from the original plan. And a few have come back and have other sports that have already started up. Their summer's long gone. I did want to give kind of a brief summary of how this whole summer has gone for us since all this started on June 9th when this team was selected by the Little League All-Star selection process. Since June 9th, I counted up what I could, and we have had 26 practices, usually about 2 hours in length. We've had 3 scrimmages, 13 games, 9 team events, whether it's team building, team bowling, team Sea Dogs events, teams barbecues, you name it. This team motored right through the district championship as I expected. I think as a lot of them had hoped. Last year we came up just a little bit short, losing in the championship to a much older, stronger Falmouth team. And we kind of knew what we had coming back, even though we lost a few integral parts. But we rolled right through the district, went 6-0 through districts. 6-0, right? 5-0 because we swept it. No one really. We 10-run ruled a few teams. And then we went on to states where we really didn't know what to expect from other districts. You never know who's going to have kind of a big stud or who's going to put up a fight. And they rolled right through that too. I mean, we really only faced really stiff competition in the championship game against Saco when we went up 6-0 and proceeded to hand them 6 runs in the top of this or bottom of the 6th with 2 outs on the board. But these guys in typical fashion showed composure and poise and managed to put more runs on the board in the extra innings and clinch the first state title for our Cumberland North Yarmouth Little League since 1978. And if you are on social media, you will see there's a picture on there with that 1978 team right next to our 2024 champs here. And it's really interesting to see that baseball goes across decades because same smiles, different uniforms. We get a little bit nicer uniforms than they had in 1978. But there are some names on that roster that you might recognize from the town. Actually our catcher, Gavin Anderson's uncle, was the catcher of that team in 1978, which is kind of special. But a couple other stats that kind of shows you what these guys did. Overall, we ended up finishing 12 wins, 1 loss. We were at regionals where we competed against Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut for the New England Championship. We started out beating Vermont, then we beat New Hampshire. And as every game went along, I said, man, I'm just happy. We've done everything I came to do. And then we'd win another one, and I'd say, okay, well, maybe we can do this. And then we beat a very solid Massachusetts team in probably the best game I've seen these guys play. And if it's available, I think there's some video you can find on Game Changer of that game. I encourage you to go watch some of it because these guys were just, the defense, the energy they brought was, very similar to what you'd see at a Greeley varsity game against Yarmouth in the playoffs. It was that level. We outscored opponents overall 133 runs to 40 in those games. We had a team batting average that just dipped below 400 to 399 at regionals, which again, if you follow baseball at all, a outstanding batting average is 300. So these guys were more than outstanding. We reached base at least 54% of the time as a team. Our team fielding percentage was .937, which means they successfully fielded what was hit their way 94% of the time. And I really would be remiss to not thank the parents and the people that supported us in getting where we are. As you might understand, going right from work to a practice every single day or something every single day from June 9th until August 9th, I think we ended up finishing down at regionals. It just takes away your summer, and it would be really easy, and it takes away a lot of work that you get done at your day job. I don't think anyone would trade it for the world. It's quite an experience, and a lot of our siblings, our little siblings who came along for the ride, we tried to make it fun for everybody, and I think in the end we accomplished that. We truly became a family. You might have seen the news release, but these guys really talk often about being brothers, being part of a family, representing their community well. And that really showed up in our support when we finally won states because we had quite a bit of support financially. As you can imagine, I think the hotels alone for the run that we went was $1,200 per family if you just had one room. Several families had to have multiple rooms during that time, and that's just hotels, let alone food, gas, you name it. So in undertaking for fundraising, I really wanted to thank, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some. I tried to get them all. Portland Glass and Man Law were our primary sponsors. Portland Glass sponsored us kind of through the state tournament, and then we're kind enough to step aside and be a co-sponsor with Man Law, for the regionals as we tried to get some more funds for that. We also had some wonderful business donations from CMP, Riser Heat Pumps, Town and Country Federal Credit Union, Caddy's Ice Cream, Pammy's Ice Cream Parlor in Harpswell, Warshore Trading Company, Rise Restaurant, the Greeley Softball Boosters, Greeley Baseball Boosters, Greeley Football Boosters, and that alone tells you how we support each other as a community across sports. Morningstar Stone and Tile Company, Lucinda's. We had over 170 individual donors on our GoFundMe page, which is still up there for those of you that would like to make a last-minute donation. And we had a huge send-off barbecue and a 50-50 raffle the day before we left that netted just over around $4,000 just for that one event that we threw together in 3 or 4 days. So that just shows you how much of a community effort this was, and we really did feel that, didn't we, guys? We felt the support, and it was a fun ride. As much as I'd like to have some of these guys come up and tell you their stories, I think suffice to say, with all the events they did and the running around the hotels with 12 teams from all over New England and Mid-Atlantic, and a banquet that had 650 plus people in a beautiful tent at the Crown Plaza, these guys have really been through it all. And I think, you have a lot to look forward to with this crew. We certainly have our sights set in a couple years. Fortunately, it's a couple years away for Williamsport. But now these guys start, like they all come back and they're starting flag football, hockey, soccer, and so you'll see them on the various other, they're all multi-talented, multi-sport athletes, great students, great teammates, and they certainly deserve your recognition. So thank you for having us, and I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Yeah, Mike.
Miles, I know you've told me, but I think it'd be great if you mentioned it to the crowd that's here and the people at home. Talk about the team sportsmanship. Talk about how the boys held themselves and really honored our community.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be there to really appreciate it, and some people in this room were there. Bar none, I think we showed some of the best sportsmanship. I mean, despite beating teams pretty handily at times, these guys never rub it in. They only cheer for each other. They really are not negative at other teams, and that goes for our fans as well. And I think suffice to say, as you'd expect, sometimes when you get outside of Maine in particular, it can get pretty heated with some of the other states that show up, and there's varying degrees of sportsmanship. But these guys really came together as a team. They only ever supported each other. They never put anybody down. I never heard them say a bad word about each other, honestly. So I think, as far as representation of the towns go, I mean, this is about as good as it gets. And I think if you ask any of the other tournament directors, they loved Maine. They loved Cumberland North Yarmouth at the state tournament, the district tournament. I had multiple people come up to me at the regional tournament just saying how wonderful it was to have Maine down and how well we represented. In particular, there was one gentleman there who's been volunteering for years and actually took the Cranston, Rhode Island Little League to they won the United States Championship back in 1996 and had a few guys go on to play professionally, and he was their coach, and he said, your guys really play the game right. They're class acts. We had multiple coaches from other teams come up and root for us because they just thought we played well and we rooted each other on, and that was not the case for some of the other teams, was it, boys, that we came into contact with. At one point, we were booed for a good 3 to 5 minutes straight by another state not to be named, merely because their awful head coach decided to intentionally walk a kid that had about 11 legit home runs as a 10-year-old this year. So they really, in the face of a lot of adversity, they showed about the best sportsmanship in class you could hope for. Mr. Vail?
I couldn't let you get out of here without giving a few words here. I know Miles' father, and I know the commitment that he made to serve this community. And one of the things that's nice to see is the sons and the daughters of the parents that I know step up and serve their community. And I know 2 of the young men here today. One of the benefits of working in the community is meeting a lot of people and meeting their parents and seeing their idea of public service. And anybody who had a chance to read yesterday's paper, and there was a young fellow there who spent 20 years in California who wants to move back to this community. They're struggling to find a place to live and find a place to buy in this community. And I pass that on to the council here, the importance of us striking out and building a affordable housing project for this community, for these young men here and young women who have served their community as little fellas, but are going to grow up. And I think that the opportunity that we can provide to make sure they have a chance to come back and serve their community is just tremendous. And I can't speak highly enough about your efforts, Miles, and all the other adults in the room that have got these guys this far. And our heartfelt congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are we going to lose our crowd?
I know, we've never had this many people.
Never had this many people. Very exciting.
Bob out here trying to slide in affordable.
All right. All right. We'll give folks a moment to filter out. Thank you all so much for coming. Okay, next up on the agenda is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone up here who would like to say something? Oh, Mr. Perfetti, I get you're ready to go. All right, let's hear it.
I'll be back later too. I wanted to take the opportunity. I only get here about twice a year, so my name is Mike Perfetti. I live on Main Street in Cumberland, and I wasn't going to speak about affordable housing, but my friend Mr. Vale mentioned it, so I thought I'm going to pile on while I've got the time. In fact, it is a wonderful community. I had a phone call one day. Mr. Vale is also a builder, and he was working on a project at my home. And my son wanted to go to a friend's house. And I got a call from my son, Andrew, and he said, "Hey, can I go down to Elliott's?" And I said, "Well, no, like, I'm coming home." Like, "No, you can't. That's not the plan today." And he says, "Well, Bob says he'll take me down. He'll give me a ride down to Elliott's." So we got to know each other, and it is a nice community. Fast forward, my daughter is coming home from Dublin. She's got a master's degree in education. She's got a full-time job, and she's making a decent living, but she doesn't make enough to live in our town. The average sale price requires an income in excess of $200,000, and that's being conservative. Like, the average sale price is outrageous here. This is not a problem unique to us, and I don't want the council to think that just because we got walloped in the March election 3-1, that means that we don't want anything to be done in this town. That is not the case. We didn't want that project to be done in this town. And I've heard people say, "Well, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this." Look, your work is never done here. I've served on the council. You're serving now. People will serve later. The work is never done. We have to continually envision what kind of community we want. If you want reasons other than allowing my daughter to move back into town, make it a budgetary reason. Every time the budget goes up 3%, our land valuation has to increase by 3%. I'm not even talking affordable housing. You need to build new properties that will increase the land valuation by 3% if you don't want people to pay more in taxes. That's just the simple math of town financing. And the last thing I would say about affordable housing is it's the right thing to do. I own a business, and we employ between 30 and 40 people. And the vast majority of people that will benefit from our growth are the folks that work with me. And so I say, they're good enough to work with me, but they're not good enough to live next door to me. And I would like you to ask that very same question. I have mine. I've got mine. I'm in good shape, and I'm going to be fine. And so is Mr. Vale, and so are a lot of people here. But we want to look out for the next generation of people who want to continue to make this town, to continue what this town can be and what it was. And that's not nostalgia. That's just good common sense policy. So please get busy working on some affordable housing and some housing in general. So thanks. I'll be back.
Thank you. Any other folks like to? Yes, please come on up. If you wouldn't mind just telling us your name.
And I too will be back later. Terry Maloney Kelly from the west side of town. I have connected with several of the new councilors and our new town manager, and I really want to give a public welcome to you, Andrew, as well as the councilors coming back to serve on this new team. My hope continues with every conversation that our community can come back together using some of the time-honored ways of our past: community and peer engagement, inclusiveness, honesty, openness, and respect. Mr. Manager's fiscal year 25 goals were outlined in recent publications. Most of his items appear to be items in process from 24 being brought forward. I am wondering if this council has set goals for fiscal year 25 and if not, when they might be presented. In the meantime, I do have a few thoughts I wanted to share when contemplating your goals. My first topic is communication. I was happy to hear that there is now protocol established by this council and the manager as to who, what, when, where, how, and timing of response to citizens when items are brought forth to the council. I would like to suggest that these guidelines be referenced at the beginning of each council meeting so everyone who is participating understands what the expectations are from a communication standpoint. Secondly, you recently introduced flash vote as a means of surveying our residents. My first concern is the lack of equity that this process presents to those in our community who are not connected by a computer or smartphone to text or prefer not to use these methods as a form of communication. Second concern is the short turnaround time given to answer the survey, which is 48 hours. My third concern is the phone option. I actually had a nice conversation with a gentleman at Flashpoint because I, even on the computer, was a little concerned about the process. So I was advised that in order to do the phone call comes in from them. If you do not answer that call, there is no way to call them back. So, first outreach. 24 hours later, they will try once again to reach you by phone, and if you don't answer, then you have missed that opportunity to participate in that particular survey. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't answer every telephone call that comes through my phone unless it's identified. So I just have concerns about the phone process, but I think that's a critical component for many of our residents to not be excluded from having their voice heard. I would like to also, I would urge you to market more specific information about how this works, because I had to call them to really get an understanding of the process. So to educate our community, especially those that may need a phone option. And I would also like to know how the town is going to address disseminating the information from these surveys, especially for those who participate by phone. Because that is not something that Flash Vote does. So I would ask you to consider those concerns. Next topic is ordinances. I had to choose just a few because I thought I had only 5 minutes, but anyways. I would like to ask the council to take a relook at our fireworks ordinance. PTSD in varying forms has become a significant health concern for many human beings. In addition, animals of all kinds are negatively affected by these random explosions. Lastly, many of us have neighbors that live in adjacent towns, such as North Yarmouth, Falmouth, Yarmouth, that do not allow fireworks at all, but suffer the unintended consequences of our ordinance. Wyndham and Gray have much more restricted days and hours that fireworks are allowed to be discharged. Cumberland has the broadest of time frames and number of days. Setting off fireworks at 9 a.m. is an unexpected and disconcerting event in your day. Please reconsider these time frames. I know many fellow citizens have the same concern, and I am asking you to please reach out to these council members so they can also hear your voice. My next request for the council is to review the Public Law 2023 C630, which is going into effect January 1st, 2025. And that addresses the prohibition of the manufacturing and sales of products that contain PFAS. This product list is long, includes many household products in addition to artificial turf, which will be banned as of January 1st, 2029. This was an important item to the MSAD, which they included in their recent school referendum. The MSAD's scope of responsibility is limited to the students and parents of our community. They are not held accountable or responsible for the health, safety affordability of our community, nor the protection of our town's natural resources, including our aquifers.
Terry,
As
just to let you know, you're at 5 minutes. I'll give you the additional 2 minutes
I
for
wish
the
you had
rebuttal.
that up there because I could have spoken faster.
Oh,
So,
no,
I'm
take
almost
the,
done.
No,
so
take the
please
additional
let me
2
finish.
minutes
As
for the rebuttal time.
protectors of our community, I'm asking this council to consider immediate action to prohibit the MSAD from moving forward with their turf field initiative at this time. As a community, we have no means in place to require testing of materials being stored over aquifers or prohibition of identified carcinogen products being placed on top of our precious natural resources. It is time to be proactive and protect what we can never get back. Thank you.
Thank you. I will get back with you onto our communication part. You had a lot of great questions in there. I'll get back with you tomorrow because I think some of these things we may have to get different or consult some other folks for different pieces of information. It's a shame our town attorney's gone because she probably could have answered a couple of them. Okay, anyone else like to say anything during public comment? Come on up. If you wouldn't mind just telling us your name and where you live.
Nick Danbury, I live in Cumberland. And I'm just here to speak on your first Rise Pizza pub extending an hour.
Oh, so we are, public comment is for items that are not on
Not
the
on the list.
agenda, so you will have plenty of time to talk if you'll just give us a couple more minutes. No, great, no, it's great. It's learning for all of us. All right, anyone else? Come on up.
Good evening.
Oh, your name and where you live.
My name is Josh Otto. I live at Country Charm Road here at the center of town. Chair Filson, Town Council, thank you for your service, truly, as public servants. In this day and age especially, thank you for your time and all your efforts. I'm here today to offer some input and hopefully some consideration on an issue that I brought forward 3 months ago, almost exactly, and was hoping to hear more about that. But in light of that, I'm coming forward again today regarding the town's plan for bulky waste services. When this issue first came to the council initially, it was brought forward, this is last year, it was brought forward by former town manager who brought it forward as a contract renewal. There was no agenda items indicating a reduction in public service of bulky waste service. There was no public comment period. There was no notice around this reduction in service. When you as the council were presented with that decision, you were provided a statement that our new contract provider, Casella, does not provide bulky waste service. And unfortunately, we know that that's not true. Through working with the associate town manager, Bolduc, I was able to obtain the contracts. And it's very clear that there's a myriad of options for the town to consider regarding bulky waste services. And when the issue first came up, you were not shared those options. You were, however, shared at least one of those options when, after I spoke in May, and the former town manager did share at least one of those options. And so my point is simply, this was brought forward as a contract renewal. It was brought forward that the new contract provider does not provide this service. It does. So finally, as I said in May, I believe the town council, under current legislation dealing with local control as well as public meetings, had an obligation at that time to pause and decouple those two items. Certainly vote on a contract renewal for waste services providers. Certainly that was something that needed to happen. And also have a separate decision-making process about what to do with bulky waste services. You might be thinking, who's this guy? Why does he care so much about trash? To me, it's a lot more about trash. As a public servant myself, I believe in the importance and truly holding on to every part of public service that is provided to us as individuals. And as Councilor Vail outlined, it's a two-way street. We give back and we receive as part of that. But specifically, to remove a public service that was provided to the town and place that burden of providing that service on citizens, including those who may not have the physical ability to do something that was once as easy as bringing something to their curb, nor the economic ability to be able to spend a pretty considerable amount of money twice a year for a service that was provided by the town. The number I used last time was $500. That's about the estimate when I counted all the different piles on the street. And I know others on the council have experience with hiring companies to do this. And the cost around $500, I believe, is pretty accurate. So I am urging the town council to make this decision correctly, to decouple bulky waste service and actually address this issue, do it correctly, follow what is required under the law, study the issue and how it impacts all of our citizens, not just those with $500 lying around twice a year. Follow the open discussion format, certainly have a motion and certainly have a vote on this reduction in public service, and that has not yet occurred. The good news is, though, you have at least a couple months before the next service delivery timeline. So as a decision-making body in closing, I do encourage you to make these important decisions about this issues and other issues and involve citizens. Please stop the practice of shielding yourself in this decision-making behind contracts. I have experience in this, and that's not how my experience has been. You face the issue directly, and you address it head-on, but you involve new people. So I'm calling on you to add this item to new business tonight. If you don't wish to do that, I certainly understand. Get your facts with Town Manager Sturgis, but at a future meeting, please address this issue. And as you do, and as a council, with courage and faith and good faith, I encourage you all to pay attention to the rising median household income in this town. And since I started living here in 2007 and what it is today, the pace in which it has risen is remarkable. So as you witness that and watch that, ask yourself, what is the experience for those living in our town who are of non-affluence? And be very, very careful not to define the lived experience of another yourself. There's only one person that can define someone's lived experience, and it's themselves. And I was discouraged by some of the way this issue was talked about, and I'm asking you to revisit this. And finally, I'll end by saying, one of my favorites quote is economics quotes is that it's called median for a reason. There's just as many on one side as there is the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Any other folks like to comment under public discussion? All right. Okay, so we are moving into legislation and policy. Before we do that officially, we had a request earlier in the evening to reorder and kind of go through item 24087, which is the Rhines Forest Invasive Plant Control Practice Plans. First, if there's no objection, I'd like to make that accommodation. Is that okay with everyone?
You're the boss.
All right, I think we have Paul here tonight, and Todd is here. Awesome, come on up. Really excited to have Todd Ontal, who is the chair of the Lands and Conservation Subcommittee Forestry, the Forestry Subcommittee, and we also have our town forester, Mr. Paul Larrabee, here as well. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and thanks to the council for considering the approval of the invasive plant control practice plan for the Rhines Forest. So this is the third invasive management plan, as we like to call them, that has been prepared. The other two have been approved, and so this is hopefully our third and last one for approval. And this plan is prepared like the ones prior through extensive surveys of the Rhines Forest property to identify the occurrence of invasive plant species, to map them, to establish priority areas to then guide how we can manage invasive plant species on the Rhines Forest. And so the plan, much like the other plans for Town Forest and for Twin Brook, outlines a timeline. So what actions need to occur or should occur based on the abundance of different invasive plant species when those actions then would take place over time. And it is really important for us, to have these plans, to really have a comprehensive approach for how we manage invasive species on our municipal lands. So hopefully with the town council's approval of this plan, then Paul can submit this plan to the state for reimbursement, and then that allows us to apply for further funding from the state to pay for some of the costs of the treatment, which is coming up. Actually, there's a deadline in just a few weeks for these applications from the state. And so with that, I think, I think that this is an opportunity for us as a town to really stand out as an example of a municipality that's really taking a proactive approach for how we manage invasive species on our town's lands. I think this is a really good opportunity, to showcase the really good work that the commission does in managing the town's properties. So, and as you mentioned, we are joined by Paul Larrabee, our town's forester. So I'd like to introduce Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations on the chair role.
Thank you.
From a former chair.
And congratulations, your term is up,
My
right?
term
Are
is
you all
up.
done?
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations to you.
I just want to say I know what an effort this takes, guys, and how much time it takes to do what you're doing, so I'm well aware of it. And when I put together this work that I do here, it's thinking about all the taxpayers in this town. You know what I mean? And I've had my Boy Scout troop out in Rhines cutting buckthorn. I mean, we'll take them out there and we'll have them cut buckthorn. But this invasive plant problem runs beyond just the town lots. It's town-wide. But they really have the potential to eliminate the forest. It's that simple. They have the potential to eliminate the forest because what they do is they prevent any new trees from growing. And many of you have walked with me in the woods, so you've seen it. You've seen what's going on. So these plans are important to put steps in place. There's been treatments done in our town in the past prior to my involvement, prior to me being the forester. There has been treatments done but not followed up on, and they've just re-exploded again. So just trying to get this on paper, so whether it's me, other volunteers, anybody else who's involved knows what's going on. Not only that, this plan makes you available for funding to help cover this cost. I mean, town staff with the forestry mulcher are out in the winter around plowing, grinding these invasive plants. So, I mean, realistically, hopefully by the end of the month, we turn in applications to get funding to help this project keep going from the Maine Forest Service. And I look forward to taking another walk in the woods with you guys, and we'll talk about what we've done, what's going on at Rhines, what's going on at Town Forest, what's going on at Twinbrook. It seems like we're constantly battling with the forest. I mean, we were just talking ahead of time. Hemlock woolly adelgid has now been found at Knight's Pond. That wasn't there when I wrote the plan and submitted it to you. So that's another issue at Knight's Pond right now. So we're trying to stay on top of it. That way everybody knows what's going on. And realistically, this is what forestry has come to in the southern part of the state. I mean, I grew up in Gray, and from my career for 25 years, from managing woodlots to now managing and trying to beat invasive plants is what it's turned into. So if you have any questions, I'm available.
Before we do council discussion, is there anyone from the public who'd like to ask a question or comment on this agenda item? No? Oh, yeah, please.
Could you just clarify what the new item is at
Sure.
Knight's Pond? We didn't hear what it was.
Oh, sorry, I'll speak into, it's Hemlock woolly adelgid. It's an insect.
Oh, yeah.
Paul,
Yeah.
could you repeat her question? Nobody at home can hear
Oh,
what she
sorry,
said.
yep, I should. The question was what was just recently found in the forest at Knight's Pond and it's an invasive insect in this situation. It's Hemlock woolly adelgid, which we have seen on the coast. I've seen it Woolwich, Brunswick, Bath area, absolutely devastating the hemlock in that area. Fry Island and Sebago Lake has a big population as well. So I do the work for the Portland Water District. We found it on one of the islands there in Sebago Lake as well. So yeah, and you're familiar with it could be devastating.
Any other folks have questions? Okay, I'll open it up to council discussion. Mr. Magoon.
Do we have an idea of how much the state would reimburse? You know, a percentage, or is there an amount, or?
What I'm going to try to do is put together a proposal to them. Last time we put in a grant to them, it was pretty extensive, and the funding was not as extensive as our request. I don't know how else to say that. So what I'm going to try to do is continue the work that the work that's been started, but try to get them to fund the next level of that work, whether it's the mulching, the guys mulching more on the invasive plants. I'm just going to try to get them to fund maybe another year of that work. I have been in constant communication with the Maine Forest Service and Jan Ames Santerre. I think this time they like the idea that the town has been doing this on their own, and they think it might be a great partnership. Do you know what I mean? Because the educational component of it, to go to private landowners and say, hey, look what the town of Cumberland is doing on their land. And to be honest with you, I'm getting calls as a business owner from other landowners in Cumberland that are dealing with the same thing, and I'm trying to steer them towards funding to help them as well.
And just sort of a follow on that, do we have a rough idea on, I mean, this is obviously a multi-year plan of costs going forward. You know, I realize that some of that cost is volunteer hours that will take up, so it might be a huge number, but it's not really a huge number.
Correct.
When it comes to dollars.
Yep. I wish I could give you a dollar. I wish I could give you a dollar amount, but I would say this invasive plant, it probably doesn't end. Do you know what I mean? The goal is, and I'll just explain the general goal of invasive plants is first stop the spread. Okay, that's the first and foremost, which means educating the public about what invasive plants are, how they spread, but stop them from spreading, stop them from being planted where they shouldn't be planted, all of these items. And then from there, our approach is, and I hate to say this, you're never going to eradicate them. You're not. What you're going to do is start in the areas where they're least affecting the forest, where they're the least prolific, and work from those areas into the most prolific areas to try to save the forest as you go towards, we call it the mother lode, where the seed bank is, the biggest concentration of the population. We work from the outside edges toward that to try to save the forest as you go towards the mother lode. Realistically, we've done it. We've been working on this for years now, and we've got a lot of work done for, not a tremendous amount of money, using town staff where we could, do you know what I mean, around their schedules, using volunteers. Our group goes out, gets more volunteers, and cuts buckthorn. The town now has a subcommittee on invasive that is working on weekends at Twin Brook, cutting them. So a lot of it's been done with a lot of volunteer effort and town staff as well. I'm hoping this grant will help kind of push it to the next level. That's my hope.
Councilor Thurston?
Couple things. One is, I know LCC Chair Mike Schwint, when we went over this plan last time, I think, did mention, planting, I mean, with knotweed, what outgrows it? Not much, but eradicating, but at the same time planting what will work. And I know that the orchard has a lot of space, and we've talked about that in the subcommittee meetings as far as having the orchard be kind of like a nursery, like a plant nursery for things that will eventually be replanted in the town forest, for example. And I don't know if, once this plan goes forward and you're talking about being eligible for more funding and things like that, and grants also, there are a lot of just tree grants. I know, like hundreds of trees for free, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So that's cool, and I look forward to that. I just looked up if there's such a thing as an invasive ordinance, and there is, so at the risk of over-regulating, you can only do so much on town land when, the rest of the town is just full of this stuff. And I struggle weekly uprooting knotweed from all of my beds. and it will never end because there are private plots of land that are just knotweed forests. And I wonder at what point, I mean, this is tangentially related, but it's part of the greater picture is, as a council, perhaps, you know, talking that over and figuring out if one time in the future we do define what an invasive is, and then we are all responsible for ensuring we're not contributing to the problem on our private property. So that is something, and it does exist in Clark County, Georgia.
I think, and Paul, you and I had this talk in the woods last year, but a little bit about kind of also understanding not only what our private landowners are doing, but what North Yarmouth is doing
Yes.
and what Falmouth is doing, right?
Yes.
Because it's also
We're all dealing with it, right?
Right,
Everybody's dealing with it. And I think what we've been talking about with the committee is, it's been a few years since we've done an educational workshop for landowners in Cumberland. That used to be where landowners who owned more than a certain amount of 5 or 10 acres were invited to come to a workshop here. And I think that's due again, where I can talk about forestry, the assessor can talk about Trigo tax law, we can have this kind of this roundtable discussion. Invasive plants could be a big discussion related to that evening workshop. So every one of my plans starts out with stop the spread, right? Or, you know, basically, and unfortunately, not a lot of people recognize invasive plants and what they are. You know, glossy buckthorn, you know what I mean? I see it, I still see Euonymus burning bush planted in people's front yards. Do you know what I mean? I hate to say it, but Crimson King, the Norway maple, it's invasive. The one with purple leaves, it's invasive. So just having those discussions with the public, I think will just maybe spur them to look a little bit more at their land. I know I own a woodlot, and I walk around my 106 acres all the time just hoping that nothing has come across the property line, really. Do you know what I mean? So.
I have one follow-up question. Is the invasive subcommittee looking for more people all the time? Is that something that we should be advertising, like in the crier or something?
So, yeah, so the invasive subcommittee is one of our newest subcommittees, and I won't speak for the chair, Dave, but I get the impression that interest would be welcomed for additional members of the subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Schwinn, is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Is that a fair? You don't have to. Well, you're up. All right, got you up.
Madam Chair, Mike Schwinn, Chair of the Land Conservation Commission. We have 4 members right now on the invasive subcommittee. We could easily add 3, 4, 5 people willing to go out there and get their fingers dirty and keep them busy for an extended period of time. Yes, so if there's a interested volunteer, we'd sure like to hear about it. Thank you. And also, before I get away, Madam Chairman, last time I was up here, you talked about taking a walk through the forest, and we were looking at doing it the week of early part October.
October 5th or 6th is
Is-
one option.
That'd be a Saturday if that would work.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for following up on that, and we will sync up schedules and get back with you. That works.
Also, we could use a couple more people on the forestry subcommittee, so.
All right. Recruitment night. Yes, Mr. Vail.
As I read through the presentation and looked at the areas here on the map, one of the things that jumped right out at me is Range Road is pretty heavily forested from, basically from Cumberland Junctions right up through to the farms. And then it extends right across to Falmouth through Blackstrap, Route 100, up in a Hurricane and across, and then going the other direction. You know, it jumps over Blanchard Road, Greer Road Extension. And so the area of affected area is large. And so, you know, I don't want to throw a pebble in the pond without having some effect of reaching out to all the landowners, because I see ourselves as, one, being a leader, and I think that's an important place to be, the town, the community being a leader and showing what others can do. But I think we have to be more than that. We have to be actively outreaching all those property owners and I'm not trying to burden you, but I want to make sure I don't waste my money either.
No, and I can tell you that I do the invasive work for Falmouth. So, and I'm doing 2 new management plans for North Yarmouth. And then, I mean, I can bring that to them as well and say, hey, maybe this is a multi-town approach on an educational outreach, you know what I mean, between all the communities. We have invasive plants in New Gloucester, believe it or not, we do. So, I mean, there's no boundaries on it, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, with the rivers that run through our communities, the rivers are great conduits to spread it. And that's, you know, that's another issue related to it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, and I'm happy to have that discussion with them.
It's probably also the CCLT, the Royal River, all of these
Trust.
organizations, right? So it's kind of, getting all the big brains at the table. Awesome. Is there, just kind of keeping an eye on the agenda, is there any other kind of council discussion on this particular plan?
Let's get
Is there a motion on the floor?
I can give you a motion.
Okay.
All right. I move to adopt the Rhines Forest Invasive Plant Control Practice Plan as recommended by the Lands and Conservation Commission.
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Yep.
being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all your free time.
I'll see you guys in the woods. Yeah. I can't tell you how, I'm coaching baseball, so I was actually excited. Our Legion team came in 3rd in Bangor, and I was like, oh, all kinds of 10U players for next year. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right, moving right along, 24-086. I don't know if that's become 24-087. Okay, great, thank you, sir. To hear a request from Rise Pizza and Pub, 319 Main Street, to expand hours of operation in the Town Center District to 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. So just a little bit of context here. Back earlier of the year, the council had considered a request for expansion of hours. That was originally until 11 p.m. Thursday through Sunday. That particular request was tabled. We are now hearing a new request from Toby and Simone from Rise Pizza for Friday and Saturday until 10 p.m. And just for everyone's understanding, the ordinance kind of around the town center district kind of currently reads that the hours of operation for all non-residential uses in the TCD shall be open for business only within the time frame, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's what the current zoning dictates. And now I will stop talking and would love Toby and Simone to come on up if you'd be willing to come and chat with us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Simone. This is Toby, my business partner and life partner. I'm not great at public speaking, so I'm going to read my thoughts to you so I don't forget anything. Toby and I live right here in Cumberland. We have 2 children in Mabel I. Wilson and Greeley Middle School, so we're part of the community as residents and business owners. Our restaurant on Main Street has been open for a year now, and we have a good sense of where our customers are coming from and what their needs are. The customer base is primarily local families with children and couples living in Cumberland and North Yarmouth area. We're not drawing a ton of people from outside the community, so we're very resident-driven. We've also realized that our business is heavily influenced by activities and events happening at the schools directly behind our restaurant. There are a lot of evening sports games, meets, school plays, concerts, talent shows, etc., which often finish up right around 9 o'clock. The new turf field, if it goes through, will increase these evening activities even more. As business owners, for us, it's very challenging to hear customers say they wish they could come to Rise for a quick, convenient bite to eat after an event, but instead they have to drive to Romeo's or Pat's Pizza in Yarmouth, who stay open longer because Rise is mandated to close at 9, even on the weekends. It's very tough for us to know that all that revenue is driving right past our building and going out of town. An extra hour of operation could allow those customers to stay in Cumberland and help Cumberland local family restaurant. A little extra business each week could also help us make capital improvements to the abutting neighbors wish to see. For example, new fencing along the Village Way condos and more green buffers between properties to block sound and light, which I know has been an issue. We realize that the ordinance change will affect the 20 to 30 residents in the little town center district, which is a half mile from Main Street, the Congregational Church, to the municipal cemetery just past the credit union. But RISE is here to serve the whole community. We want to provide for the whole town of Cumberland and North Yarmouth. It has over 8,000 residents who could benefit from having access to quality family-friendly food and a safe place to gather after 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. The local high school students could benefit from having a place to hang out and eat together after they've played a game or cheered on their friends without having to get in their cars and drive out of town. This gives peace of mind to their parents as well. In the future, if another restaurant or convenience store opens on Main Street, the extended hours could benefit them too. The population and demographics of this town have changed tremendously over the past 12+ years since the original TCD mixed-use ordinance was negotiated. Nobody can deny the change. It's time to allow a few small changes in order to make Main Street and its businesses accessible to the whole town, as well as the residents who live on it. Thank you. Anything to add?
I probably shouldn't.
Before we move into public comment, are there any questions on what Simone said from any counselors? Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Mr. Perfetti, I think you had your hand up first, and then we'll come to you next, sir.
Again, my name is Mike Perfetti. I live on Main Street. I'm actually outside the affected district. I live across the street from the Congregational Church. My wife cautioned me against giving a history lesson, lest I sound like other former town councilors who come before us. But I was a counselor when who shall remain nameless, Bob. I was a counselor when we went through the process to change the entire zone. It was thorough, comprehensive, and inclusive. For some reason, this feels different to me. I realize things change, and I am definitely open to change. But I just don't think this change is appropriate, as it does not take into account the reality of living in a mixed-use zone. I prefer this moving through the ordinance committee, a number of public hearings, the possibility for discussion about what this will mean. Perhaps even the comprehensive plan is the best place for this, since really this is a question of what kind of town do we want this to be? What kind of center do we want to have? Additionally, I did a little bit of work, and the folks are correct. Pat's Pizza is open till 10 p.m. All of the rest of the restaurants that I looked up in Falmouth and Yarmouth closed by 9. There's not a single one aside from Pat's Pizza, and I guess Romeo's now, which are, if you look at Pat's Pizza and Romeo's, they're in two very different districts. There's 0 residences along those strip malls. All of the other businesses closed by 9 p.m. and seem to do okay. So I guess these are the questions that I would like the council to ask yourselves. Is this, there are a few of them. Can we have a thriving, vibrant downtown that is truly mixed use, where residents can enjoy their properties and businesses can offer products and services to these residents, all residents, within the framework we have already provided? I believe the answer is yes. So, thanks.
Thank you. I think you were next. Are you still ready to go? Great, come on up. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name and where you live.
Hi, my name's Andrew Stern. I live on Orchard Road in Cumberland. I've known Toby and Simone actually a really long time. I moved to Maine in '05, and whether Simone remembers or not, she's one of the first people I met because I lived on Exchange Street in Portland, and she was working down the road, and she was very kind to me. These are great people. They're involved in everything. They run a business that requires modernization and requires kind of keeping in front of the people that they serve. And we've all acknowledged through various issues tonight that, this town's growing and expanding in different ways. At the end of the day, 10 p.m. on a Friday and a Saturday is completely reasonable within kind of any context. You can bury it into, countless hours of legislation and throwing it back and forth. But, at the end of the day, the town is speaking. The people that I know that go there love these guys. They do a great job. They're consummate professionals. They've both done this before in other places, and they really know what they're after. So, it's a great town. We got to kind of find a way to work with the people, especially, business owners that, they live here. They're right here. So, I want to speak on their, behalf to, kind of really, try to push this along. Whatever the 11 o'clock thing was before, doesn't matter. This is asking for 10 o'clock on, 2 very reasonable nights. Primetime television doesn't even end until 10 o'clock. So, I've got a child and a couple stepkids that are in the schools, from 15 down to 9 years old, and we have events all the time, and we are constantly wishing that there was a place that we could stop in town and go. And I just, everything that Simone said is 100% true, that, very frequently it's like, we just missed it. And so to not have that, I live on Orchard Road, which, if people don't know where that is way far out of town. So for me, my options are Gray Center, really, or, there's very little for me to go to. So to be able to drive into the town center, what should be a vibrant downtown area that we're all trying to create, and ask for a little bit of leniency on a Friday and Saturday night, I just think it's such a reasonable request that it should be kind of hard to look past. So anyway, I think these guys are great. I think we have a really good business with them, and I think we should really all consider, how do we encourage them to stick around and do more for the town and to be here for us when we need them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi again. Nick, I live in Cumberland, and I'm also here to speak on the behalf of Rise. It's a place that I frequent with my child. And I would also say that it is not unreasonable to stay open till 10 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday evening. What we're trying to build here in Cumberland is a community, and they are part of the community. And myself, I drive to downtown Cumberland every day, 20 minutes out of my way, to get a cup of coffee to support the community, where I could just go down the street to Starbucks and get a coffee. So I make a conscious decision to come to the town, to support the town. And I think a lot of other people will do that as well. And for an extra 2 hours a week, I don't think that's a lot to ask. I also put my other hat on. I owned a very similar business to theirs, and an extra hour is very important. It's very, very important. 1 hour could mean making payroll or not making payroll. And I don't know their business, but I do know the business I owned. And that hour is very important. So I'm just here to say that I think this community is growing and changing, and it should get behind the people that have invested their lives, their time, and their money in these businesses to provide services to the people that live in this community. And that's it.
Thank you. Come on up. Over there. I mean, you can come up here if you want to.
We'll accept you.
My name is Dr. Stiles. I've lived in Cumberland for about 50 years. Probably not many of you live here that long, have you? And I got to say, Rise is a great addition to this town. It's just a family restaurant, and I would say comparing it to Pat's Pizza is a little different. Yeah, they close because, they're all through. Whereas with Rise, they get people coming directly from school events. And I think, as the gentleman said, 2 hours a week, I mean, it has nothing to do with payroll. I think they just want to satisfy their patrons. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Or over to the mic, rather.
very bad at public speaking. My name is Kelsey. I am one of the owners at Dara Bistro. We're also in the town center zone. And most of you know we are a coffee shop in the morning. And at night, Wednesday through Saturday nights, we serve as a fine dining restaurant. We only have 9 tables. We have 25 seats. So my goal is to seat every table 2 times. We're open from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. currently. We would love to be able to be open later, but right now, because we're fine dining, people sit down and they eat for 2 hours. So I try to seat the last table at 8 o'clock so that they're finishing up by 9:30 to provide, the neighbors a good ecosystem. We'd love to be able to stay open an hour later on Friday and Saturday nights. It would mean the difference between making payroll or not. Between being able to let parents come after they put their baby down to bed and sit down and have a nice dinner. It would mean a lot to us. It would make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Come on up. Yep.
Hello, I'm Andrew Baca. I live at 325 Main Street on the corner of Farwell and Main Street. I've lived there for about 28 years, I think now. I support business. I moved into that house as a small, I had a home office there. I lived next door to the Frost. They had a home office before they moved out, and I was going to Rise every week, once a week, to support their business. I got gas at the gas station locally, and Market Food Stop will tell you I probably eat there 8 times a week. So way too much. It has been a struggle trying to balance between residential and business and trying to find that right mix. When a business closes at 9, it doesn't mean lights are out at 9 o'clock. That means that the parking lot's still got people in it, and they got their crew cleaning up, and they're going to the garbage cans, and they're getting out at 10 o'clock. And if you close at 10 o'clock, those people living right next door to any business, Stars, Rise, any business, they're going to have lights on in their back going on till 11. And it makes a difference. Right next to Rise is, I think housing for. Is it senior? There's some senior housing in that, and when you have people closing in, opening the doors, and starting their engines at 11 o'clock at night and stuff like that, it's a disruption. One thing that just kind of bothers me a little bit about these improvements that they just talked about, if they had extra capital, those are things that they're supposed to be doing already. If people talk sometimes about, we have to accept change. I'm going to be a little snotty here. I'd like for our current zoning ordinances to be enforced. It's not being done. They're supposed to have a buffer. They're supposed to have better lighting. They're supposed to have all these things, and they're saying that if we got money, we could do it. They were supposed to do it a year ago, and the town has fallen on that one. They haven't. The residents have said something about it, and the town has really done nothing about it, as far as I understand. Let me see, I got some other notes here. So, just to be clear, this says something on the notice it's about for Rise, but it's for any business in the town district that's present now or in the future. And so anybody on that could buy a house, put a business there, and they'd have those hours too. That affects a lot of people, okay? Should residents of this area have more say? Yes. If you're living in West Cumberland and somebody's going to put something in your area, I think you have more say. If you're living on Cottage Road or whatever's the other road here, if somebody's going to be doing something in your neighborhood, yes, I think you have a little bit more say that somebody's living 15 minutes away or something like that. I'm a little frustrated too about the comments people have said about it really helped their payroll and stuff like that. They bought this business and they knew the rules, or they should have known the rules. And now coming to the town saying, boy, it would really help us out financially if you could change the rules here, I don't like that. I mean, they knew what the times were they were supposed to. They knew the other zoning restrictions. They haven't fallen through with those things, and it's frustrating. It doesn't build good relationship with the community, with the neighbors. And I think that's some of the fight back you're getting from the residents, is that we haven't felt that they were being respectful to the community. If you're talking about change, it's like we have to accept change. Let's extend the town center district down to Stockwell Drive, where the Cumberland turnaround is, and make it go all the way to Greeley Road. Let's include more people in this area. Then you might not just have 25 people that are affected. You have 50 people that are affected, or 50 families that are affected. And you might understand a little bit more when there's slow creep on losing your community to expanding business and the noise, pollution, whatever that's going along with that. Did I have any other notes here? I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Would anyone else like to speak? Come on up, or to the side.
I'm going to read. As you know, I am Janice Spalding, West Cumberland. And I say West Cumberland because it is not my place to say whether or not changing this business hours ordinance for the town center is appropriate or not. It's not my neighborhood, and I'm not directly impacted by the decision you'll make tonight. But I do hope, as counselors, you'll look beyond the benefits or intentions of one lone business and consider the bigger picture, including the thought process, as Mr. Perfetti said, behind the original ordinance, and the concerns of the neighbors directly impacted, as well as any unintended consequences. You are, after all, not just considering this one business, or any business, but any business, current or future. It's easy for any of us who do not live in that neighborhood to declare it would be a great idea and how great it would be to be able to get a pizza on the way home from a game. But someone's once in a while convenience shouldn't outweigh the lived experience of or impact on people who live somewhere every day. And I urge you to listen and hear the neighbors' concerns and give them weight. And for other residents forming their own opinions, to consider what you would do if the house next door to you, and this was once a house prior to Louis', suddenly became a business next to you. Downtown Cumberland was once, and there's probably not many in this room who will remember this, except the gentleman who's lived here for 50 years. Downtown Cumberland was once an active business zone. There was a grocery store, 2 convenience stores, a doctor's office, a dentist, a greenhouse that was once the largest producer of carnations in the entire United States, even a TV repair shop in where the dentist is now. Most of those businesses are long gone. Most of them are now houses. To say to these residents now, what did you expect when you moved onto Main Street, is a false argument. Even the gentleman who's lived there for 28 years. Main Street has been a residential area with a smattering of mostly 9-to-5 businesses for decades. And that is at the town's influence and design. But while I leave the arguments for or against this particular ordinance to those directly impacted, my question for the council is this. If the town center, a very narrow area with its handful of businesses, has and needs an ordinance to regulate business hours, why is the same not true for other mixed-use areas of town? Both Route 1 and Route 100 in particular currently have more businesses than Main Street, with a greater potential for additional businesses to come and a greater variety of those businesses. While you sit here tonight debating whether or not to allow businesses on Main Street to stay open until 10, a 24/7 gas station is under consideration for West Cumberland. And while it's unlikely the town would propose a similar project for any other area of town, you absolutely could. Do we not deserve the same consideration as this limited area of Main Street? The town had a prime opportunity decades ago to develop Route 1 into a continuation of the thriving business zones in both Yarmouth and Falmouth. The town instead chose to build housing, who now understandably balk at some of the proposed business developments around them. The former town manager will love to tell you about the big box brand name hardware store that isn't, because the condos across the street protested. And it wasn't that long ago that the members of the Casco Bay Drive neighborhood balked at large storage units near their neighborhood. Completely understandable. Now the town's attention turns to Route 100 as perhaps the last opportunity to create a substantial business corridor. It's an area that, in fact, would welcome thoughtful, planned business development and won't demand just cute little coffee shops and small office buildings that close at 5 p.m. and don't open on weekends. But that doesn't mean that West Cumberland, and in fact all areas of Cumberland that could see business growth don't deserve the same thought and consideration that you're giving Main Street tonight. Wherever you land on this ordinance tonight, and I hope you will give the residents' words pause before you make your decision, I hope you will then turn your attention to creating appropriate ordinances elsewhere in town, including Route 100 and Route 1 in anticipation of business zones there and mixed-use zones there.
Thank you. Carolyn, you ready?
Hi. My name is Carolyn Curry, and I sent you guys a letter today, a little bit late. I hope you got it.
We did.
At the risk of, again, being repetitive, I just want to be on record and just say a few things. I think my primary concern with this is Toby and Simone and us. We have been able to work out things so that we have a livable relationship. And I'm not. But the larger picture for me is the trust that we put in the town to create a balanced, comfortable situation for businesses and residences. I think we have a very special zone that needs to accommodate both of our types of experiences. I feel like changing just 2 hours, I know it seems like very little. I do live, by the way, for those of you who are new, right next door to Rise. The other side of me, on the other side of me, sorry, Doug. On the other side of us, we have a dentist office. The school is behind us, food stop slightly off to the left. We are surrounded and we are ground zero. I would very much hope that you guys really take into consideration what it means to have businesses all around you as a resident. And I, by the way, love my house. When I bought it 20 years ago, it was a residential zone. I don't really love that argument that what did we expect? We moved into a town center. I moved into a residential zone. I like businesses. I moved from the city. I like the thriving nature of our town. But I really feel like your responsibility is to look at our lovely, inclusive town and the kids running down the sidewalks and the games that are played and the families that support them. And I feel like we are sort of a modern day Mayberry. And I just want you to be very careful changing the zoning that would allow just these small changes that would erode the nature of our town. I really hope you're just careful about balancing things and upholding the commitment you made to us when you changed this into a mixed-use zone that you assured us would be comfortable and okay for us as residents. So if I forgot something, I'll come back. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Gatine. I live at 325 Main Street, and it is in the zone. And I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I have to correct my husband, because what good wife wouldn't? We are actually 2 weeks away from the 26th anniversary of living in our house.
That's the right answer.
And again, I don't know that it's relevant or not, but I can't help but point out the fact that we have been in our house longer than any current business owner on Main Street. We're still there. Food Stop is the business, but Mark is a newer owner than us. You know, again, the Frosts have been there forever. You could count Greg, you know, but it was a family business. It was a home office when we moved in. So again, we've been there a long time. And yeah, I do feel like my opinion matters in this, and it maybe should weigh a little bit more than people who live across town. So I absolutely agree that it's time for us to look at the town center standards and rules. We have had 10 plus years to learn from them. And there are certainly things that I would love for us to revisit, because I think that I know for myself at the time, there was a lot of anger and frustration around the process, and that actually the people who sat on the committee as resident representatives, by the time they finished their work, all of their residences were no longer in the town zone. So there actually wasn't anybody living in the town center district that actually sat on the committee that made the rules. So yes, absolutely. And I don't think it should be about one business request. This has never been about one business. This is about the town, and everybody said I'm not going to push that any further. Just a couple of ideas that I would have if we were going to look at the zoning. Parking, so limiting idling of any kind, and limiting any kind of back-in parking that would put exhaust directly into people's windows or into their yards while somebody's idling in a parking lot. Total length of opening hours. Again, and I love Doris, so I don't want to pick on you, but I'm going to pick on you, So they're doing morning service and they want to do late evening service. Think about the person that lives next door to them that just put an addition on their house for their family to continue to live there. And are they going to have people showing up at 6 a.m. to do business and then there until 11 p.m. at night to clean up after business? Any one of our residences could end up in that situation where we have a business on one side of us that closes at 10, which means really 11, and then another one that opens up at 6, which really means somebody's there at 5:30 getting things started. So again, yes, let's look at the hours, but let's look at them as a whole, not just this one location. Sound ordinances. Do you know what 75 decibels sounds like? I could do a demonstration for you right now if you'd like. But I was actually sitting in my yard the other day, and my neighbor was using a weed whacker. And I was like, okay, what is that noise level? All right. And I turned on the decibel meter on my phone, and it was 65 decibels. I was in the middle of my yard. They were in the middle of their yard. And I could not carry on a conversation with somebody right next to me. So the idea that 75 decibels up until, and again, I'm not saying that Rise is doing that or Food Stop is doing that, but that's what would be allowed. So let's say that somebody decides, hey, karaoke's fun. Let's do that on Saturday night until 10 o'clock. So again, just absolutely. Let's look at the ordinances. Let's think about these things. And then again, kind of the mix of business. I don't know, and again, I don't want to go into a history lesson, but for those of you who don't know, a year before the decision was made to change it from a residential district to a business district, the town approved 2 housing units that were age restricted 55 plus. They increased the residential density of this one block by 80% and then turned it into a mixed-use district. So again, think about what makes sense as far as, is this a proper mix of type of businesses in this setting? Plus the fact that you could have a daycare come in, plus the fact that you could have, more senior housing. You've already got senior housing, and you have a high school right there. Again, it's been brought up, enforcement. It matters. There's ongoing issues with current business enforcement. I just want to, again, reinforce that.
Melissa, I hate to cut you off. You're at 5 minutes.
I
take
didn't know I
another.
only had 5 minutes
Take
for
another.
this.
Take another 2. We're gonna at least for our initial round.
Okay.
Everyone will want to give everyone the opportunity to speak.
Okay, yep, absolutely.
So
No,
take
I'm sorry,
another
I didn't
2, and then
realize
you can
that
always come
this-
back.
Yes, I didn't realize that this was limited to 5, so.
That was on me, not you.
Okay. Okay, so I just have to say this because it's part of the public record. The letter that was written to the town requesting this change, in my opinion, mischaracterized the activities of the residents in relationship to this request. We were referred to as putting out anti-Rise flyers. There was no disparaging of Rise in the flyers. I wrote both of them myself with Carolyn. because it was never about Rise. We talked about the reality of living next to a business, which is noise and odors and sounds and lights. But that wasn't about Rise, that was about living next to a business. So again, this got turned into a Rise versus the residents thing, not by the residents, all right? We were referred to as an army of dissenters. So my one comment about that is, you know, we used our voice, and hopefully that's how it was perceived by the rest of the council, is that we used our voice. The other really important thing is in the letter, the talk about Carol and Doug approached us, and that's key. At no point has Rise reached out to the residents. You guys asked them to, the former town councilor asked them to, the other committee, planning committee asked them to. They never reached out. Carol and Doug reached out to them. They've never reached out to anybody else. And part of this whole thing of our community is having conversation. And unfortunately, they have not been willing to participate in that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is John Davis, and as it's been pointed out, I live in the zone. This isn't about Rise Pizza, and I'm sorry that it has become perceived as an anti-Rise or their request. They simply have been at the forefront of an issue that I think does need to be corrected. Left to us in the zone and Rise Pizza, I think we could have resolved this thing long before this and to their satisfaction. Their request of a couple extra hours on the surface really doesn't mean a whole lot, and I agree with that statement. The problem is the way the zone was set up and now is articulated and changing. Rise Pizza's request is not about Rise Pizza. It is just about their concern for themselves, but they're impacting the rest of the zone considerably. So I would ask you not to move forward with this. I would ask you to move to fix that so that you could address their specific issue and it would impact them exclusively and not impact inadvertently all the other residences or other potential stores or storefronts that might be set up in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
I'm just going to piggyback on what John said. I agree with him, and the one thing I would like to say is if you do decide to move forward with this and allow Rise 2 extra hours, I would like somewhere for you to have in the fine print of the change that this is not grandfathered into the next business. Because as Melissa pointed out, it could be a karaoke bar. And if there's karaoke being sung until 10 o'clock at night, I'm a singer, I will die. So anyway, the point is that it would be great. We're at the mercy of our neighbors. And if you have a good relationship with them, you can work it out. If you don't, it stinks. So if you could have something that's not grandfathered in, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Come on up.
My name is Chris Gower. I live in the zone as well, and I'm not a public speaker, so I'm going to read what I have here. My name is Chris Gower. I reside at 318 Main Street, Cumberland. I live adjacent to the food stop and directly across the street from Rise Pizza and Pub. I've lived on Main Street for nearly 3 years since I moved back to Cumberland in 2021. I have a daughter that's a junior at the high school and another daughter that's an 8th grader coming up this year. Over the past 3 years, I've dined at the former Louis Grill just a handful of times. I frequently stop at the food stop, and I've dined once at Rise Pizza and Pub. And although I'm a direct neighbor to all of these businesses, I want to make it super clear that I have zero personal connections with the owners of Food Stop or Rise. Yes, we will be neighborly. I've
run into Toby a couple of times, asked him, how business is, and that's it. In the 3 years that I've lived on Main Street, I've never once had an issue with either business. Food Stop is located directly neighbor to me. In fact, I share a wall with them. I reside in the same building as them. So their most northern section of their store is adjacent to my living room, where I spend a great amount of time, at home while relaxing. So I've never had to talk to the owners about any of the noise levels, smells, traffic issues, customers that shop and support their store. Rise Pizza and Pub is located directly across the street from me, all of maybe 150 feet away. In fact, my living room and bedroom windows run parallel with Main Street, therefore looking directly at Rise Pizza. Cars leaving Rise in the evening shine their bright lights into my living room while I'm watching TV. Do I have an issue with that? Absolutely not. I simply close the shades in my house and I'm fine. I don't even notice that there's cars coming in and out of that establishment whatsoever. In the summer, as most people do, I open up my windows to my home. I've never been bothered by any of the noise of opening doors or closing doors of cars across the street, nor at Food Stop. I've never, I don't hear loud music playing. I've never been bothered by the lights on their property. I've never experienced any foul odors coming from the property. Yes, there's smells from food from both locations, but it doesn't bother me. And I get I may be a little bit different. Everyone has a different preference. I'm unsure of how many individuals are employed at Rise, but I would think that most of the employees would benefit from staying open that 1 extra hour twice a week to help support their families and pay bills. I also want to mention that when the high school has basketball games, soccer games, football games, concerts, theaters, whatever it might be, that go well into the night, 9:30, 10 o'clock, dozens of these people, there could be dozens of cars, hundreds of cars leaving the high school. I'm sure a few of them will stop at Rise Cafe and grab a pizza, grab a beer, grab wings or whatever. And as I heard tonight, it'd be a great place for kids to be able to stay in town so they're not going to Yarmouth or they're not going to Freeport or they're not going to Falmouth to grab pizza while their parents are waiting for them to get home, at 11, 12 o'clock or whatever it might be. And again, I'm just here to, express my support for Toby and the business to stay open. And again, I'm a direct neighbor and I totally support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, rest of the council. Welcome to the new town manager. Great to have you on board. My name is Charles Day. I'm a resident at 276 Main Street, just outside the TCD. My wife and I moved here about a year ago. We've got a 2-year-old son. To say life is a little crazy and hectic is an understatement. So some nights, we're lucky to get him down by 7:30 or 8 o'clock. As a new neighbor in town, I like to take a walk down the street, go down, sit dinner, and be able to walk down and walk back. And usually it's kind of crunch time. So I've known Toby and Simone for 20 plus years. Some of the most respected and honorable people in the restaurant business. My family's been in the restaurant business for a long time, and they are very highly regarded as professional, honest, sincere operators, both to their customers and their people. I think we're extremely fortunate to have two people like that willing to invest in our community and take really their restaurant to the next level. I think the biggest thing we need to look at, though, as residents of Cumberland, they are one of our own. These people live in Cumberland. They're building a business in Cumberland. I feel, regardless of playing Monday morning quarterback with the process, I think how it originally started, they were provided feedback. They kind of went back to the drawing board and came back with something extremely reasonable. And I think as the demographic continues to be younger in our town and activities increase at Greeley, you know, at the middle schools, a reasonable request of, you know, an extra hour on Friday and Saturday, I know my family fully supports, and I know talking to others who can't be here tonight probably because they're out doing events and running kids around. You know, I've spoke to a lot of people that I've asked to reach out to the town and weigh in as well. So I appreciate the council's time and effort to take this item under consideration. I feel it's really nice to see a good crowd and everyone really speaking up. And I think, you know, we want to do what's best for the residents, but we also want to make a statement, you know, we support our local businesses. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will also note that we received a lot of emails, all of which will be put into the minutes and in the public record. So people can look forward to being represented even if they're not here in the flesh. Any other questions or comments from the public? Yes, please.
My name is Stephanie Guillot. I've been a resident of this town for 44 years. I remember being a kid at that high school, always wanting a place to go after an event where we could be quiet and respectful to neighbors. I know Simone and Toby, they're my neighbors here in Cumberland, and they're great people. I don't live next to their restaurant, so I don't know what it's like for everybody who does live there. I can only imagine the headache from the actual high school traffic leaving after events and then thinking about the potential of having a business right there asking to extend their hours. But I do know that it is a safe option for the kids in the community, for members of the community, so we don't have to travel away. I don't know what's best. That's your job. Good luck. But I know that they're going to do it respectfully and the best that they can. I also know that, I mean, what was it, the baseball team that was here? It sounds like Rise even supported them and gave to them because they were mentioned. So I don't know what the answer is. I do know that I would love to have that extra hour once my son goes to bed to also go and have a drink or have a dessert with my mom. So I don't know what's best, but I appreciate you guys taking the time to give them an opportunity to do what's right for their neighbors and for our town.
Thank you, Stephanie. Please.
Hi, my name's Brock Morgan. I just moved to Cumberland a year ago, so I know nobody wanted to give history lessons, but I could use a history lesson, so.
Would you mind just putting your mic up a little bit? Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So I moved here a year ago, and we've talked about not giving history lessons, but the best history lesson I could give myself moving into town was a comprehensive town plan. It's 179 pages. I mean, I was just looking at it on my phone. I just bought my house last year, and I'm in between two businesses. I'm across from a dentist. I'm next to a dentist. There's a parking lot that's 6 feet from my son's bedroom. I read that comprehensive town plan. There's protections built in. I'm like, oh, I can live with those hours. But if we're going to change the way that the comprehensive town plan works, it takes a little bit of my faith in what's already been decided on and how it's supposed to work. And now I have to get up here and plead my case why I don't want a business to stay open 1 hour later. So I think there's a process. I'm not confident that this is the best way to do it. So thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yep, please.
Ready for round two?
Go for it. I am ready. Are you ready?
I'll try. This is a technical question as opposed to an opinion. First is that I noticed that this proposal this evening is different from what was tabled before. I'd like to know what happens to the tabled motion, number one. And number two, does this need to now go back to the planning board?
So the tabled motion would have to be nominated to come off the table in order for us to discuss that. So tonight, what's on the agenda is actually to hear the request, and that's it. And so I don't have a crystal ball. A counselor could surprise me and make a motion that, is anything, but really kind of our first step tonight was to hear the request, because we hadn't heard that request before. We heard a different request, which we, discussed. We made some missteps, and we had a community meeting, and it ended up being tabled. So our goal for tonight was rather to kind of sprint, was to just take a little bit more of a step back, and listen to everyone who's turned out, listen to kind of everything that's kind of come at us. I don't know if that hopefully answers your question, but is that clear, kind of?
Does this go to the planning committee?
So if there were to be a motion, it would have to go back to the planning, or if there were to be a motion to accept and that passed, it would go then to the planning board? Is that right, Mr. Sturgis?
If, Madam Chair, you are correct. What you would, council has multiple options on the table. You could refer it to planning board for review and recommendation, and then they would, since it's an amendment to the zoning ordinance, so that's their province. So that'd be where that could be taking up, similar to last time. And then council could decide you'd like to say, we need more time to work on this, refer it to a workshop, for instance. As the previous gentleman spoke about, the comprehensive plan is upcoming. You could say, you may decide not to take any action and decide that you have this as an item for the comprehensive plan, and that experience to examine it as a question. So, but at that point, you'd be looking at all the zones. So those are pretty much the areas that are probably the most viable at this point to go forward with.
Does that answer your question? Awesome, great. Anyone else before we move on to council discussion? Okay, we will move on to council discussion.
Well,
Who wants to go first?
Matt, were you going to say something?
No, ma'am.
I was going to say
Just waiting with
something.
bated breath, Counselor.
Sorry, it's been a moment since I've spoken. I don't feel like I'm ready to make any type of decision tonight. I think, kind of reflecting back on when these initial discussions were happening and some of the missteps that kind of coincided with where we were at, I feel like it would be in our best interest. Well, one, I teeter back and forth on the whole comp plan, this being a part of a greater conversation, which I think it will be regardless, but I think at this point, it really is in our best interest to have a community meeting surrounding it and then go from there. I don't know that we're in any type of place to have any type of decision tonight. That's where I'm at.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Go ahead, Mike.
Get after it, Mike.
Well, I think you guys know where I'm coming from with this, and I've been in favor of this since the conception. I don't buy the skies falling discussion that I've heard. We're talking 1 hour on a Friday, 1 hour on a Saturday. As somebody who's lived here their entire life, for me, Rise Pizza is something that I always pictured that we would be at years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Everybody wanted a restaurant that you could go to instead of having to drive to Yarmouth or having to drive to Gray. And I think adding a lousy hour on a Friday night and a Saturday night is pretty much a no-brainer. I think we can make a decision. I think we can make a good decision that's fair for the entire community. Listen, I'd love to put this out to referendum. I think we know where it would fall. I think it would be a slam dunk in a referendum. But I think this is a fairly easy decision for the council. 1 hour on a Friday, 1 hour on a Saturday is not an unfair ask. And I support it. I support it. If you want to go to workshop, fine. If you want to send it to a vote, fine. But this is a good proposal for something that's needed in our community, and I'm glad Rise and the other restaurant are here, and I couldn't support this more.
I agree, Mike. I definitely don't disagree. I think there's a need for it, right? And I like the window of time, but I also want to make sure we're following a process. I think there's been a lot of call to action recently in the community to make sure we are following a process, so I'd like to be cognizant of that. And I don't think making a decision tonight kind of falls in line with thinking about the kind of purview.
What would you think about sending it to referendum?
I mean, what does that look like, Matt?
You have time. What you'd have to do, we'd work with the town's attorney, we would craft a question, and we would have to put the giddy up on it a little bit, because we need to have that question ready in advance of September, because then you need to have your order in for your ballots, and then get ready for the absentee voting process that needs to take place, so the ballots need to be prepared 60 days in advance. However, I think that we could, if council gave the manager the direction to go with that, we could get it done and have that ready for a November vote.
Bailey, we've heard constantly, this is about community, this is a community center. Let the community vote. Throw it out there, let them vote.
I don't disagree with you, Mike.
I think Councilor Thorson was up next, and then I can get in line. Actually, Councilor DiBartolomeo, and then back to you, Andy.
So I think that this one decision can't be made without looking at the rest of the things happening in the district. And that's why I don't necessarily agree with the referendum on that, because I think it needs to go to the ordinance committee. And I think we need to look at the whole thing. Ms. Gattine's comments about making sure that the ordinances are currently playing nice with the residences, the idea about parking limitations, things like that, to kind of make more of a buffer between that residential zone and businesses where people moved there for the residential zone that it was. And I agree, there will be people in town that will go to Rise during those times. However, I think, like I said, it's to me, it's not just saying yes or no on 2 extra hours a day. It's part of a greater thing that I think we have to consider. And whether that's a workshop or comp plan is much longer, that's like a couple year process, but this is also part of, the other business zones in the entire town, like, West Cumberland and other places where the comp plan committee may decide there's going to be another area where we're going to focus on commercial growth that will become mixed use. Like, this is a thing every, 10 years you look at your comp plan and make changes. So nothing's ever set in stone, and change does happen, but I feel like there is a responsible way to go about it to do, what's best for everyone as much as we can. So that's where I'm at.
I agree.
I honestly would be more interested in workshopping it. I want to understand the cause and effect, not only to this one restaurant, but the other businesses, and also the future. I mean, if residents had concerns about what was going to move into the zone, and then things ended up becoming more than what they anticipated, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about what could become in the future by making these changes. It's not about one business. I think it's about just in general the area. I mean, and as Councilor Thorson said, we're going to be having other businesses wanting to come forward and being open 24 hours. Is that something that we want as a community? We always talk about being the bedroom community. I think that's one of the niches I think that we have here is in Cumberland, is that, and why I came to Cumberland is I like the quietness. I don't like hearing roadway and at night, and I don't want traffic from other places coming into our neighborhood 24 hours just because they know it's the next community that might have a 24-hour business available for them to go make a purchase. So I think we need to put some more thought into as a community, what the decision is.
So I also like the idea of moving more towards a workshop and trying to get more information on it because, you know, as much as I love the idea of after a football game or a basketball game or anything like that else, going and getting pizza, you know, growing up I did the same thing. We had to drive, unfortunately, but after a football game, the whole marching band, like we'd go to Little Caesars. Unfortunately, it was a local place, but it was decent pizza, hang out and all, and it's a good place for kids to not get in too much trouble. I'm worried about the precedent we'd be setting going forward with changing the zoning this way. And, you know, whether it was, you know, doing a referendum, and that every other zoning change, you know, request, we would have already set a precedent for going to referendum. And I think that, you know, the point of us being up here is that we're the ones that make the decisions, but we're also the ones that take the hits for making the decisions. And, you know, the people elected us to make those decisions and not to kick it back to them every time that somebody has a request to have something done. So I'd like to see more info on the impacts for the whole zone, and because life, you know, changes happen, and, you know, we could get, you know, the karaoke bar was mentioned, you know, who knows what's going to come in that area. And maybe you'll open a karaoke bar and, you know, we'll get you singing.
Melissa and Carol and I live on Main Street, and we sing karaoke with our neighbors, but we do it in our barn very quietly. And they come over, so we won't do it again. I will.
You know, it's what works now on the sort of handshake agreement is great, but then you get the next person that moves in, you don't know who they are. You don't know if they're going to, you know, have the same sort of view or understanding of what's going on and the impacts and all that. So I'd like to see some more info and make sure that we're doing, you know, crossing our I's, dotting our T's on this, because whatever we do, whatever way this turns out, we're setting precedent every time we take an action.
Mr. Sturgis.
Madam Chair, perhaps one thought the council may want to consider, and perhaps a way to thread the needle on this, and it would still require amending your ordinance, and maybe something to explore with the town's attorney is, as Ms. Curry had said, you know, if you're making a change for the entire, you know, making a change, it affects the entire zone. But you could think about possibly finding a way to do a licensing agreement that would have to go to the planning board for approval, similar to like a site plan approval, but for that one, and then it would stay with that business. But then if a business closes, it wouldn't be grandfathered. Then you could, you know, if it was sold and, you know, Chuck E. Cheese goes in, then that could possibly, you know, that would be the end of that license, and then someone else would have to apply for it, and it'd be on a case-by-case basis. But that may be an option, but you would, again, that concept would have to go to the planning board because it's a zone change or zoning amendment that they would have to consider, weigh, and then make a recommendation back to the council as far as after reviewing it. So that may be something that could be explored at a workshop level, but with the town's attorney, and then the pros and the cons. But thinking about it, it may be one way to balance the need for one versus making a change for all. Something to consider.
Okay. I think Councilor Thorson and then Councilor Vale.
Saving the best for last, Bob. My follow-up question to that would be, because, you know, we've heard from Dara, I'm curious where all the other businesses stand in that district. Would they like the option but not use it, to where, I mean, is this going to be something where all the businesses in the district are going to have to come forward to the council asking for these license agreements? And at that point, wouldn't it then just be better to just do it on the ordinance level? So I guess I wonder what the need is outside of, you know, the two businesses that have requested it. That's something that I'm curious about, is if we've gotten any sort of feedback like that. And then I guess that's my thought.
We did do outreach to all the
Okay.
businesses in the zone, and Dara received a mailer from us as well as Food Stop. So we did outreach specifically to them, as I guess learning from prior experience. Wanted to make sure that, we went up to the 500-foot circle to try to make sure we notified all. I mean, we had a good turnout tonight, so that's a good start. But we did reach out to all the businesses that may or may not be affected by this.
Okay, thank you.
So you could get a root canal at 10 p.m.
That's what I was thinking. 10 p.m. dentist.
There you go.
Can finally get an appointment that works for me.
I did speak with Mark Fortin, and he sent an email in at the prior request, and he did not at that time have interest in extending his hours past 9 p.m. That may have changed, but he did send an email to the council back in April. Mr. Vale.
Okay, so as somebody pointed out, things change. Yes, they do. I've been here 60 years. Things have changed a lot. Just imagine for a second if you had a piece of property on the coast. The coast of Cumberland is pretty much 100% residential. If you were a mussel farmer or an oyster farmer or cultivating kelp, seaweed, whatnot, you are a commercial operation, and there is absolutely nothing that the town of Cumberland can do to prevent a guy in a boat from paddling up and motoring up and down in front of your house 24/7, 7 days a week. That's change. We never did have mussel farming. We never had oyster farmings, but in the last few decades, we've really embraced the idea of aquaculture, and it doesn't come without some misgivings and some concerns about residential neighborhoods and how they are affected by commercial activities. And while this may be a gross exaggeration of how that happens, this is really what we're talking about. And so, yes, the request is for 2 hours, for 2 nights. It's a really minuscule request. It's not really the request that we're looking at. It is what we're looking at is a wholesale change by one individual requesting us to change a whole section of town. The ordinance, when this was proposed, was not without controversy. This was not an easy lift. It was very controversial, and there was a lot of back and forth around this. There's not a single one of us in this room who doesn't own a piece of property and doesn't know what the surrounding properties are that abut us and what they could use for. Everybody knows that a vacant lot, if you have a house and you have a vacant lot beside you, you know what's going to happen there. At some point, somebody's going to develop it, and you hope, I hope it's a single-family house. The zoning says he could put in a major subdivision. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. We're reviewing a request not more than a couple months down the road where we got our hands singed. We put our hands in the fire and we got our hands singed because we didn't have the whole backstory. We understood that there was a lot of concerns by the neighbors and some things that needed to be changed. And so now we're talking about a wholesale change of a zone. And, for us to even consider this is, I think it goes beyond just the ordinance committee. What does this community want? So that's what the questions we come down to. That's a comprehensive plan. We are getting ready to implement a comprehensive plan committee and go forward with some planning and to find out what the direction. We're going to do a lot of surveys, and we're going to find out what the community wants. And yes, things change, but if you're an abutter to something, and just to share another example, I received a call today from an abutter. He has a non-conforming business in a residential zone, and he wishes to expand that, and that will be coming before the council. And I will probably have to recuse myself because I can't get up and jump up and down and say, I don't like this, nor can I say, hey, it's a great idea. It's in my neighborhood, and as a counselor, I will have to step down. But the idea is, when you live beside something or you abut something, there's an expectation that the rules are going to be followed. And when the rules are changed, by God, you better have buy-in by everybody. So I believe that this is something that at the very least, the comprehensive plan can address this, but I don't believe that the council has its hands off, or too little time has passed, too many questions remain. A referendum, I believe, is be completely inappropriate because we're looking for what the direction of this community is going to go, and we need to see what it is.
Okay, thank you, sir. I will share where I am on this. I think there's just a lot to process. There is the desire to keep, what does it say? Certified business friendly, right? We want to be supporting our businesses. We want to be supporting our neighbors. And we want to be supporting, we've also heard about zone questions in other parts of town, not just the TCD, right? So for me, I think the most appropriate next step would be to have a workshop and look at, we know the comprehensive plan is coming down the line, right? But I think an initial workshop to understand what the options are, whether or not the one that Mr. Sturgis has mentioned is even viable, folks just to kind of process a little bit. Maybe also get some information if possible from the other businesses in the TCD. We can reach out to Food Stop and the dentists as well to get their input. But I think that there were a lot of great points made tonight. I'm not comfortable moving forward without kind of looking at all of the possible outcomes and talking through those once we have all of those details. That's me.
Ready to make a motion?
Go for it.
Madam Chair, I move to refer to a town council workshop, this issue, on August 26th.
Sure, I'll give you a second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor? All opposed? 6 in favor, 1 opposition. Brenda.
It wasn't Brenda, it was Bob.
No, but you tell, but you tell Brenda at the end.
I know. It's too late. I make jokes.
I'm loving this humor, Denise. I'm here for
I'm like
it.
this all the time. I'm just trying to control myself up here.
I'm here for it.
August 26th is our next town council meeting. Let's follow up with the town attorney to see if they can be available for that as well. And we will also notify businesses, and all of our workshops are, of course, filmed and open to the public. So feel free to come for round 2, and please follow up if you do have any other additional ideas or thoughts. We are here to listen. And thank you all so much for being here. Yes, would you like to say something?
A technical question.
Sure.
The workshop is the council only, or is it a participation?
Typically, it's kind of internal council discussion. If you have like a burning question, we have latitude sometimes if you want to ask a question. Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Can we take a fiver before
Yeah,
we
sure.
continue?
We're going to
since
take a
we're like-
5-minute recess, if that's okay.
After a motion is made.
live. All right. Moving right along. 24-088. Hey, quiet down. I move to authorize the town to apply. Oops, that's the motion. Sorry. We're not jumping ahead that much. 24-088 to authorize the town to apply for a small harbor improvement program SHIP grant for the Broad Cove Reserve Pier project. We are happy to have Barney Baker here. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you very much. Barney Baker. I live in Freeport. I work for GEI Consultants. We're engineers and planners out of Portland. I'm a waterfront engineer and have worked with the town on the Broad Cove Pier Master Plan since 2015. I seem to remember Bob Vail was on the committee, and your vice chair of your Coastal Waters Commission is also in the audience. And Matthew Sturgis has recently taken over from Bill Shane as a big cheerleader for the project. So where are we right now? 2015 started work on what was then the Payson Pier. We did a survey on it and actually condemned it because it was in such poor shape. We then designed and built a new pier facility, which was installed in 2019. And it was done with a Small Harbor Improvement Program grant. The state paid for 50% of it, all organized by Bill Shane. And so that project has now been in existence for almost 5 years and has been quite successful. I hope everybody's been down to see it. It is quite an unusual project in that the water is very shallow. And so the pier is quite long to get out to the float system. And then the float system is, it actually will dry out in a extreme tide. But if you go down there on any given day, you'll see people doing Pilates out on the floats or getting into a paddleboard or coming down in the spring to see the horseshoe crabs. Lots of schools go down there for trips so the kids can go onto the beach. The facility's just been, I think, phenomenally successful. And what comes with success is a shortness of space. And so what is in short supply out there is actually the float system itself. So Bill Shane and the Coastal Waters Commission, led by Charles Rumsey, your police chief, sort of commissioned my company to design an extension to the facility. And so this is what you have now. You go out there right now and you have the gangway, an ADA gangway. That's why it's so long. It complies with the American with Disabilities Act. But it goes down to a set of floats with a return, and then there's a kayak or paddleboard float here, and a low freeboard float so that people can apply for a permit and keep a paddleboard or kayak down on the float system. And then this low freeboard float makes it very easy to launch it. And then when you come back, you put it back on the rack and go home. There are also some racks back on shore, and so those boats can be launched from the beach. But you want to do it during high water because otherwise you don't want to drag it through the mud. Or alternatively, you can take it off the rack and you can walk down the pier and down the gangway, which is about 300 feet to get to the water. So the other thing that's kept at this float is dinghies that serve the mooring field. Right now, I think there are 68 moorings that have been reserved. They're not all used at any one time, but the subscription is there, and they've kind of have a lot more space to add more moorings, but there's a limit to how many dinghies can get stored on the facility. So what I've been doing is working with the Coastal Waters Commission to expand the facility. So the fixed pier is the same. There's no change in the fixed pier. But what we're doing is we're extending the floats further seaward by about 48 feet and putting in a new dinghy float. Everything in red is going to be new. Putting in a new dinghy float. And then you pushing these floats that were there, came off float 2 before, are now pushed further seaward. So what you effectively have done is created a little mini sort of harbor out on the end of the pier. And so that protects the small boats, the dinghies from the prevailing southwesterlies. So you get a sort of calm area here so the dinghies don't get bashed around and damaged during while they're down there. And basically, there's more spaces for the dinghies, so the town can accommodate more people on the float system that need to get access to their boat. They've got the same kayak facility, or I keep saying kayak. What I really mean is paddlecraft, because of course you can have paddle boards, you could have canoes, kayaks, basically shallow draft vessels. So have a facility here to launch boats on this side, and then on the other side adding a similar facility to launch more kayaks, because they're just, I think everything is on a first come, first served basis. You sign up if you're a town resident, you get more favorable points on the system than you would if you're a non-resident, but there is I think for every 5 residents, there's also a non-resident space. And the other, for the larger boats, remember these boats are out in the mooring field in deep water. They now have, with this new facility, they have a longer space to land, and what we've done is we've oriented this into the prevailing winds. So again, the southwesterlies blow along here every afternoon, and so a boat would come in and it would moor along here and pick up passengers, or come in and visit from away and walk around your beautiful preserve. But those big boats could only be left there between, say, mid-tide through high tide and then to mid-tide. So there's a limit. They couldn't be left there overnight because they'll hit bottom. So this is the new facility. What we've done is with any system like this, we need to permit it. And so right now we got worked with Coastal Waters. This is really their plan that we worked with. We worked through several options. So we have Coastal Waters Commission approval. They're the kind of the local regulatory body. And then we are so close to getting DEP approval and Army Corps approval. In fact, I thought I would have those tonight. I did make inquiries last week and said to the regulators, where are the permits? Because we've been talking about this a long time. And they both assured me, DEP and the Army Corps, that they were in kind of final approval, final processing. So I should have those shortly. And we also got a submerged lands lease because the state kind of rents their submerged lands, which is anything seaward of the low water mark. So next thing we've got to do is pay for it. So what we've done is we've put a price tag on it. We've talked with a local contractor, got a price from them for all the floats, and we've added mobilization for the contractor. We've added the moorings that are required for it. And there's one other piece that we had to add, or this is the dolphin that supports the gangway. So in the winter, you can raise the gangway clear of the ice. We're also putting a water depth on one of the piles so that the pile will be color coded. So people that go down there and use the facility or coming in can look across and see how deep the water is at the float. So obviously if you're coming in and you see 2 feet and you draw 3 feet, that should be an indicator that it would not be a good idea to keep coming. From a regulatory perspective, we've had to address eelgrass impacts. And so what you see here in green, here's our float system again. What you see here in green is the mapped eelgrass. And eelgrass is a resource indicator. It's an indicator, it's an incubator for small fish. It's habitat for shellfish. It's basically birds feed. It's an important part of the ecosystem. So eelgrass has been a big concern on this project because there's an eelgrass bed that separates the pier from the mooring field, and we've actually got a channel through it. And the town has worked very hard to do studies on the impacts of the eelgrass of this facility. So the area in green is previously mapped area of eelgrass. It's not there now, but the state has said, well, it was there at one time when it was mapped back in 1987, I think, so it could come back. So we're kind of forced to deal with that area of eelgrass. Anyway, what we've done is negotiated carefully with the regulatory agencies for this facility to go into effect, because it's dimensionally it's really what's needed for the growth of the facility. And we do have some eelgrass impacts, again, on previously mapped eelgrass, not what's out there now. But nevertheless, they have requested the town pay a premium to a mitigation fund that will construct similar habitat in another location. So it's called in lieu fee funding, and it's kind of a last resort, but we weren't able to successfully eliminate that in the negotiations, but did work carefully with Friends of Casco Bay, the Army Corps of Engineers, and DEP to come up with this mitigation plan. And so part of the funding for this new facility is payment of an in lieu fee fund that's currently about $13,000 for the eelgrass impacts. So the total cost of the facility is estimated to be estimated to be in, I'm sorry, you'll have to look sideways for this, is estimated to be $260,000 in 2026 dollars. Less so if it were to be built tomorrow. And why did we project ahead? Well, because we're applying for a Small Harbor Improvement Program grant. And once you're accepted for the grant program, and this is a great project, I think it will be accepted, no problem. But once you're accepted, you get put in line, and the money doesn't come through until you get to the front of the queue. And so when that does happen, the state will fund up to 50% of the value of the facility. And they specialize in kind of waterfront access and public waterfront access. So the cost to the town in 2026 dollars would be $130,000, and the state would chip in $130,000. So what I have before the town manager is a SHIP application, and what that describes the project, provides these drawings, and basically indicates that the town supports going for this application. So it requires the town council to approve of the intent to fund, and you still get another opportunity to actually support the funding. But I don't know, Matt, did you want to add anything to that? Or?
No, I think, excuse me, thanks, Barney. Yeah, the big point tonight is to make sure the council, A, is aware of, you know, of the direction, and it's basically, pardon the nautical pun, but we're maintaining the course and speed of the prior plan. So that's kind of where we're at on that, but we do, when there are funding opportunities that are grant funding opportunities available, we want to pursue them, and we want to pursue them aggressively. So that's why we brought that in front of the council this evening. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as you know, that promotes to have coastal access is a very important attribute of the comp plan. So this expands that for more residents and allows that greater amenity. So thought it was important to ask for permission instead of beg for forgiveness in the future. So that's why we brought this forward to the council this evening for action to keep this moving forward. And like I said, it would probably be in fiscal year 26, possibly fiscal year 27's budget. So we have time to go ahead and plan for the for funding opportunities as well, from either from capital planning or potential TIF funding if that's available as well. So, but that's why we brought it forward this evening.
Would anyone from the public like to make a comment? Sure.
Good evening, Adrian Kendall, 190 Main Street, and I really wasn't going to say anything, but I sat through everything up to this point, so I thought at least I could get something out of this. I just want to say, first of all, because I have the opportunity, a vote of great thanks to the harbor master. He does a great job for the town and keeping everything ship-shape down there. If you'll pardon the pun, I'll try to refrain from further. But just to reiterate what has been said, at low tide, you do have to drag your dinghy out through there, and it's very difficult to address, and it's extremely crowded. There are more dinghies that are even shown on that because they extend all the way out to the end of the kayak float, and even now it's basically a game of Tetris. You have to untie and move them out of the way. So this would be a very welcome addition, and the accessibility point really cannot be overstated in terms of sailing, hole in the water you shovel money into kind of thing. The accessibility that the town makes available for all of the citizens, really, if you look at the cost for the dinghy and then the mooring field, really, it makes a huge difference. And we have such a great legacy of it, but as a coastal community, I don't know, I think we probably have among the least access for the public within our community. I think it's a real shame. So anything we can do to open that up is for the better, especially getting kids out there to enjoy it. Is really important. So just a voice of support and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will close public comment on that item and move to council discussion on any other questions. Bailey Douglas.
I have two questions. Matt, just to clarify, we will have opportunity to address the funding, how we're funding it at a later date, right, if we put this through?
Correct, Counselor.
And then, in addition to that, where are we at from a maintenance perspective? I know this is kind of out of scope on this conversation, but is there anything down there that is kind of, from a capital perspective, on the horizon?
None that I'm aware of at this time. However, it would be wise in the future to put aside reserve funding going
Yeah.
forward for replacement of floats, repairs that need to take place. I think operationally, that would be fiscal prudent planning
Okay,
or prudent fiscal planning.
okay. That's all.
Councilor Magoon.
So, there's another question for you, Matt, with the last bullet point here. It says that the town is currently carrying 92 grand related to Broad Cove, which may be useful for a future municipal match. With the municipal match for this, how does that work in the sense of, if it costs 260 and the state's putting up 130, we're putting up 130, how does, the 92 that is just sort of sitting there, has that been designated for other things already? And I'm guessing that we didn't put a bond out there to say, hey, let's just throw it out there because. So I'm assuming that 92 was somehow, that number was achieved with ideas of all right, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. Or is this sort of the thing that 92 was foreseeing in the future?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Magoon. I must admit, I misspoke on that after further review, that there is not, those funds aren't there. I thought they were at first, and the finance director, Katie, provided me additional information Friday afternoon after everything was sent, that isn't there. So ultimately, we're looking at either, like I said, probably capital funding, setting aside if it's 2 years out, you may want to earmark 50% one year, 50% the next year, or perhaps look at if there's an availability of TIF funds to use for funding that, but it would be anticipated future funding.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Thorson, then Councilor DiBartolomeo.
Just a question on the funds. Did they never exist, or was it,
No,
they go somewhere else?
Yeah, thank you for the question. No, Councilor Thorson, it's I'd asked her to give me the information, and after reading through it, and said, can we just verify this? I want to make sure that it's there. And in the reconciliation of what they're doing now with finance is working with RHR Smith and Associates to clarify and correct some questions. That was one of them that got clarified quickly on Friday.
Okay.
So that's where that's at.
Okay.
But there were funds, through the bog, as Councilor DiBartolomeo knows, there were funds that were for Broad Cove, and there's been flowing in and out over the years for different needs, acquisition and other areas there. So basically just misread
Okay.
how that was accounted for.
My question is, by extending the size of the pier, would it require the town to have more moorings to be, added out in the area? Or how does that work? Does that change any of that, or is that something separate?
So my understanding is that the number of moorings is limited by the dinghy access that's available, and also by the upland parking. So at Broad Cove, you have to look at those two. You have to look at your whole facility and see what the impact of adding moorings will be. But my understanding is that I know that there is additional space out in the water for moorings. So you can physically put them out there. And this facility would add more dinghies. So then you need to look at the parking, and I think your parking is in good shape out there too. So, but having said that, there's certainly the demand for those moorings. Casco Bay, there's a lot of demand for, boat space. And so that's a source of revenue that you can tap into with this facility. But this facility really is primarily serves the shallow draft paddlecraft facility and the mooring field.
The waiting list was, I think at one point it was 40 deep. There are people who have been I was waiting for years. I still don't have one. Bailey finally got one. But the waiting list for the moorings has been.
The only reason why I asked is because I know that we as the town, have to pay for the services to get the moorings taken out of the water and stored for the winter.
The user pays for it.
The user pays for that, yeah.
Yeah. So like so you get a mooring, right? Like I was on the wait list, I think, for 5 years. So this is my first cycle doing it, but you get your mooring, you pay for the like your permit for the mooring, right? Matt, correct my terminology if I'm wrong. And then we sought out an independent person that the town recommended to put in our mooring. We paid for that, and then we paid for the equipment that went with the mooring, and that's now ours. But yeah, that's kind of, the town doesn't pay for that.
Madam Chairman,
Oh, hello.
Mike Schwint, Vice Chair of the Coastal Waters Commission. We have sufficient space out there where we could have over 100 moorings. What has happened in recent years is we have limited the moorings to be put in place because of the no room on the docks for the dinghies. And so we have more, this last year we added 10 more spaces out there for docking or for putting the moorings in, as well as places for people to dock their dinghies. But 5 of them had to be on the land, as I recall, because we couldn't get any more onto the space that was out there. And this plan, as proposed, would relieve that considerably because there would be more places on the floats to tie the dinghies to it. And now, as far as taking the moorings out at the end of the year, that does not have to occur that I know of. They have to move the floats off the water because of ice buildup and that sort of stuff, so they don't get damaged. But in the wintertime, they have to put a different ball on there just to mark where the mooring is, and then it's supposed to be on, I think, by November 1st, and comes off in the springtime, so that you put the big ball back on there. But the moorings are placed by the individual who gets the mooring spot out there, and you have to hire somebody to do that, actually do that. But the dinghy, if you got a spot, you got a shot at the dinghy tie up out there as well, unless you're one of the unlucky ones that have to beach it and put it on the land. And as far as the paddle craft and that sort of stuff, we started out with the one space out there for about 50 craft, and we've added, fortunately, through the town's public works, building up more places. I think there's actually space for about 120 those personal watercraft out there right now. So, and there's still, I think, room for more, because when they have the drawings in the spring, not everybody gets a shot or gets a spot. So it's well received out there, and this plan that Barney's been working on, and I know he's been working on it for a long time because I've been watching it come along, I think it's good. And the question is, of course, is the financing, and if we get 50% reimbursed from the state, then it's a matter of 50% from town resources. So that's a good start, and just my humble opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councilor Morgan?
Going back to sort of financing, do we have an idea of if we did this and, what we'd be looking at for income coming in from permits and fees and mooring fees and docking stuff and all on a yearly basis going from, X to Y, if this plan got built as stated?
We would look at that as a contributing factor to offset the expense.
Do we have that right now? Like, do we have a rough idea of, we're adding 50 spaces and it's, or whatever the numbers are?
No, I can find that out though and get it back to the council.
It's $50 to put your little canoe on the rack. So.
Yeah.
Math magician. Go ahead.
One other thing, remember that plank, those planks I showed you on that boardwalk that you can do that donation program?
Yes.
I think this would be a good opportunity.
I agree.
Where people buy the planks and could put their family names on there, or, whatever semblance of things, if people want to do that. if that's an option.
Great ideas now. Maybe.
That's cool.
Any other council discussion?
We all knew it was going to be a success, and here it is. Now we got to move ahead with it.
Yeah.
I would make a motion.
I think Terry Maloney had
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Just a comment as a result of what's been talked about. So I'm just not clear about the numbers that we're going from how many to how many. But my concern as a citizen who likes to go down and go to the beach, I don't know how many cars our parking lot will hold, but the more boat owners you have, the more spots are going to be taken up all day by those vehicles, and it will, my concern is what happens to the rest of the folks in town that might want to have access to Broad Cove as a consideration for the future.
Yeah, I wonder if we could do like designated boat parking in one area and then, I don't know, something like that. It's a great point.
Do we have more room to add extra spaces down below? Or no? Is that all built out as far as the amount of spaces down by the water and?
I think that's more of the
Anywhere else?
preservation
Told ya.
area, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it's like private land or what.
Because there's also an
there.
HOA, but we could look into that a little
Yeah, it's
bit
worth
more.
looking into parking situation.
So I can offer some insight there. There's only so many spaces down near the dock that you can put in. I think that's by the agreement for the, it's part of the property covenant, I think. You're not only allowed to have so much down there. So the town actually, hires a student to ferry people back and forth to the parking lot during the summer. I can tell you that most boating facilities, you're maybe looking at a couple of weekends a year where everybody thinks it's a great idea to go boating at the same time. It's remarkable how facilities operate because boaters will find time during the week where they won't all congregate during the weekends, so that there is generally a lot of space available, and they're not cutting other people out of use.
Thank you. Any other council discussion?
I think the only other, can I say one more thing?
Please.
I just want to make sure we stay on top of this, so maybe we can add this when the time is right to the Finance Committee agenda, so we can really dig into options, because I'd really love to not incur. I'd like to find a way to kind of wash this out, so. But otherwise, I'd give you a motion, Madam Chair.
Please.
Move to authorize the town to apply for a small harbor improvement program, SHIP, grant for the Broad Cove Reserve Pier project.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just for clarity, so you said we'd get a second shot at this. This is just to
Just for the grant.
authorize for the grant.
Just for the grant, yep.
Councilor DiBartolomeo, sorry, I'll get my cadence down better. At this point, it's identifying that the town has the intent to fund it. So you're not handcuffed to it specifically, but we do need to have the intention of the town is to do that, but it's not committing at this point in time, because it's a time in the future certain, it's a time uncertain in the future, but it may be upcoming, so that's kind of why we're there. So we have time to figure out how to pay for it.
So we're committing to have to pay for it.
Not to have to pay for it. You're
If we were to get the grant, then the town is obligated at that point to determine the funding?
So
no.
If I can just add, so what you're doing right now is you're applying to the state for a grant. They're going to look at the application, and they're going to come down to look at the facility, and they're going to want to find out more about the project, and they're going to approve or not approve, but I think very likely approve of your grant application. Then they're going to tell you what year they're going to fund it. and it's going to be into the future, because these are very popular grants. You can imagine, because the state is paying 50%. So what the state will look for, they'll look for a commitment, I think, within a certain period when they're authorizing the funds. And that'll be the paper that comes before the council for signature. That'll be an agreement between the state and the town to accept the money. And the conditions will be that the facility remains public. You've already signed one for the pier. It'll be the same agreement. You signed one for the pier when it was funded in 2019.
Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Okay, I will call for a motion. All those in favor?
Call for a vote.
Call for a vote, sorry. I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you, Andrew. All right, sorry, that was five,
Mike had his
five,
hand up.
thank you. And all those opposed?
I think Mike had his hand up.
Mike, were you in favor?
No, yes, I raised.
Okay, great.
Hold him
Okay.
up longer.
All right, all those opposed? One, okay, 6-1. 6 in favor, 1 against. The motion passes. Brenda. All right. Thank you so much, Barney,
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
and for your patience on this project that has been going on since 2015. All right, next up, 24-089, to appoint Jeff Mahalik to the Planning Board. I will defer to Councilor Eads on this as the chair of the Nominations Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Madam Chair, we had, for one position, we had several applications, and I gotta tell you, it was really they were all strong candidates. You know, it's nice when you get people that are interested, people that are willing to put the time in. And we had some good discussion around it. Jeff is a local guy. He has a lot of interest in serving his community. It was close who was going to get nominated, but in the end, we decided to go with him, and I think he'll do a good job. He's got a strong background in business, equipment. He knows about contracts. He knows how to read a plan, how to read ordinances, and I think he's going to be a good addition to the planning board. So,
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this? No. Okay, I will close public comment. Any council discussion?
Congrats, and I'm glad you applied for it, Jeff, who wasn't here. But I was hoping he would step up for something else after running for council and everything. He's a great guy, has the community's best interest at heart, and I think he'll do a great job. That's all I got.
you know, Denise, you bring up a good point. I mean, Bob and I ran against Jeff all ran for 2 open seats. Back almost 6 years ago. And I know Bob and I walked away from that saying, this guy's really squared away, and he's a good guy, and he's got a lot to offer the community. And I think he showed promise then, and he still wants to get involved with the community. So it's good.
Persistent.
Great. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
I move to appoint Jeff Michalak. Is that how you say his last name? Mahalik. Oh, to the planning board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, new business. Mr. Eads.
Just 2 things, Madam Chair. First is to wish Bob Maloney a happy 95th birthday.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Bob, I know you know him pretty well, and I know him pretty well. He's a real good man, done a lot for this community, besides having 7 great kids. And, you know, you watch him march in the Memorial Day Parade, and he's keeping up or going ahead of a lot of people a lot younger than him. So happy birthday, Bob. The other thing, Madam Chair, that I'd like to discuss and get a feel from the council, I think the time is right that we need to relook at ordinance number 232-1, which is a residential solar energy systems ordinance. In particular, what I'm asking for is to set a public hearing to look at a 6-month moratorium on pole-mounted solar energy systems. It would still allow ground-mounted and home-mounted systems, but it will give us a chance, we got a lot going on, to revisit the idea of pole-mounted solar energy systems, look at the height, look at the setbacks, and yet still allow conformance with the state law that we have to allow solar systems. So what I'm asking the council to do tonight is set a date to look at a moratorium for up to 6 months. If we come up with something beforehand, we can cut that moratorium short, and that we set this for public discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we discuss this at all, or
Yeah.
do we?
How do you want to proceed to?
We can discuss it. I think I wasn't at the most recent ordinance meeting where I think this might have come up a little bit. Did it not come up? Or?
It did come up a bit, just the background, but you can see what this is about if you watch the Board of Adjustment and Appeals
Okay.
video that
Oh,
happened.
from last
This is-
Thursday.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, I mean, it's all there, and you can kind of see where we're coming at with that.
Okay. And Mr. Ordinance Chair, do you have any opinions?
I think the committee should meet again, because I think there are some other issues that might be included in that. I think what we realized, without going into a whole lot of detail and time, is that when the original ordinance was written, there was assumptions made and knowledge unknown. Things have, technology has changed, and so one of the things that I think that we all want to look at also is setbacks, size. How much size does a solar array take up? How does it affect the setbacks to the neighbors? And so I think there's more than just what Mike has suggested here for a moratorium. And I think that perhaps the ordinance committee ought to meet one more time, and we come out of this with a suggestion, and it may be that we want to have a moratorium on all solar projects for just the 6 months instead of just.
Pole-mounted solar, you can't do all of them. That's a no-no.
Yeah,
I believe we can have a moratorium if we so desire.
I think per statute, you have to have at least one way to have solar. You can't just ban it all outright, if I'm correct.
It sounds like it needs more dialogue, and so
Yeah,
I
in the
think
ordinance
that's a
committee.
great idea to maybe have an ordinance committee meeting.
I agree with Denise on this, that was one of the things that came out of the ordinance committee meeting was we wanted some opinion from our legal counsel, which we got. And the legal counsel said, no, you can't suspend the entire ordinance, but you can suspend a portion of it because you're still allowing ground-mounted and you're allowing home-mounted. But you can suspend a portion of it, which is kind of the way I'm going with this. And I agree, Bob, that we may find something out in this, but I think we need to attack the immediate problem and then go back and look at is there anything else we want to change on the solar ordinance? But I think for the short term, we got to get ahead of this thing so we don't end up with another issue that pops up. And like I said, if we do 6 months, I don't care if we do 4 months, and we come up with something that we can address within 2 months, it's great. But I think we gotta take a breath and step back on this thing, because what's coming up, it doesn't fit.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
one thing to consider would be to have an agenda item on August 26th to set that date for September 9th for a public hearing. And at that point, in between that point A and point B, the ordinance committee can also
To meet.
meet and have that discussion, so you can put a little
Yeah.
meat on the bone between that setting it and then getting it, and then you can find, you may find that you need to have it, or you may find that you don't need to have it, but if you want to, you can, as Councilor Reed said, you can grab yourself a 6-month window up to 6 months, which you could probably settle it in 2, and then come up with an ordinance change and do what you need to do on that side, let that process flow, and amend your ordinance so you can recover and adjust to new facts on the ground that the town now has for experience from the most recent projects. So I think that would line up pretty well. So we could have that, like I said, September 26th, you could consider that to set the date for September 9th, and then have your action item on September 9th would be to potentially set that moratorium there.
And we could,
I
I'm
think,
good with
did
that.
you mean
Okay.
August 20?
August 26th.
Put it on the thing for August 27th and then do it on September?
And that, yeah, so you have to set the date at one meeting to a time in the future. So that kind of buys you that 4-week window.
and also time to consult with the town attorney if
Yep,
we need
yep,
to.
exactly.
Okay.
And you can have the town's attorney come to the ordinance committee, and we can work through that too. So Ben McCall's up to speed on that, so it'd be great to have him
You're
there.
good with that, Mike?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome sauce. I think that's great. Cool. Councilor Magoon?
No business tonight.
Okay.
Whoa.
Councilor Douglas?
That's me. Finance Committee met last Monday, kind of kicking off this new group of counselors. We established dates for the remainder of this calendar year. Those are available on the town website for the public to join. And we also just talked through some objectives as we move through the rest of the year on what we're looking to see from financial reporting. That's it for myself.
Great. Councilor Vail?
I'd only follow along with that. We had a meeting of the joint Cumberland North Yarmouth Standing Committee. Would you like to take that back?
No, it's fine.
Anyways, the discussion centered around equitable sharing of school costs, and we had was he from Drummond Woodson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, yeah. Anyways, it was, I thought it was a very informative meeting, and we will meet again on that topic.
September.
Yes, that's all I got.
I apologize in advance because I know it's really late, but I have some stuff. So sorry, not sorry. Let me pull up my scribble scrabbles. I appreciate all the public comment. Before all the other public comment, the public discussion period, there are a lot of good things brought up. And Mr. Perfetti was talking about affordable housing and ordinances and stuff. Or that got me thinking about ordinances, and part of the reason why I was so interested in the ordinance committee is because that's where I feel like a lot of things can get done. And on top of solar and, I'm interested in looking at our aquifer protections or the lack thereof on the town level. Also, I want to dig into ADUs and seeing how we can make those easier for people to make, to build, to, lot splitting, all that stuff. And so that got me thinking about affordable housing, because I think that's going to be a big component of how we tackle that in town is with ADUs, and helping people help themselves in that way. Oh yeah, and the fireworks ordinance was brought up as well. I'm curious why that's a 3-day window to begin with. I know, Bob, you said there was a story about it, and then you laughed and walked away, so I don't know what that was, but that is something, too, that is relevant. And when that was enacted, I mean, maybe it wasn't such a concern about, like dogs and livestock and people having such a difficult time with 3 days nonstop of blasting without you realizing it's going to happen. It's just happening. So that is a lot. So that's something just to bring up that I'm looking forward to on the ordinance committee. And I think part of the focus from Councilor Eads about the solar is it's kind of like, if you look through our ordinances, there's a lot of gaps in time, like trends, technology that have advanced so rapidly, but the ordinance hasn't kept up. There's a lot of areas that I see in there, and I think it is worth taking a look at what we're missing, where we can be like more proactive rather than reactive to these things, where we have to put out moratoriums and things like that, moratoria, in order to get a handle on it. So I'm hoping we can do some of that. And then, what else? Terry's comments about the goals, that was something that I've been meaning to bring up as well, because when we had the council caucus, there was an opportunity to go around and talk about our goals. I know Bob said some of his, and then town manager just talked about kind of just like the things that are already happening, like reval, things like that. But other than that, I don't really have a clear picture of what all our goals are and how that is fitting into a greater strategy. Outside of the comp plan, I'm thinking about just overall strategy, like how are our annual goals feeding into some greater thing? Or like, I don't want to, I mean, and this is totally my perception, it could be not like that at all, and I'm just new, but kind of doing little side projects and doing what we feel like it during our time on the council. I'm wondering if it's part of a bigger puzzle. So that's where I'm at with that. So whether that's like yet another workshop or something else like that, where we can like kind of sit down and figure out if there is a need for some larger plan outside the comp plan, or if that's not necessary at all. At least having that conversation. Last thing is the library newsletter is cool, and I didn't realize that they have something called the Library of Things. So you can go to the library and check out stuff. I wrote some stuff down before this died. Karaoke machine, power washer, croquet, ukulele, stud finder, a VCR, a trail cam, and a thing that turns cassettes into CDs. So you can check out these objects from the library, and you can use them for like weeks at a time. There's like e-bikes, a bunch of random stuff like bocce ball, pickleball stuff. So I'm most likely going to use that for my kid's party because that stuff's too expensive. Just saying. It's there. So if you didn't know about it, now you do, because I didn't. That's all I have. Love it.
I just wanted to see if the council had any interest in looking at like early adoption of some, the elimination of the PFAS, because we know that the state had put in something that was supposed to take place in 2029 or 20.
I think it is 29, yeah.
26, 29, but you know, when you look at what they've already started eliminating, the original date was supposed to go into effect January 1st of 2025. And my concern is, if it's dangerous now, why are we waiting to make it, eliminate it later? So I don't know if there's any interest in looking into, for us as a town, to do an early adoption of the elimination of those chemicals. But I'd like to, I have interest in that.
Great. Maybe you can bring something back for us next meeting, or?
Homework assignment. Do we, how do you go about, sorry, Mr. Manager, do we, how do you go about identifying, I mean, apart from what we hear on the news, right? Like, how would a municipality go about identifying the core areas? Like things that are contaminated, or do you know what I'm saying, like landfill?
Testing,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
Okay.
I know one of my last items that I did before I left Cape Elizabeth was to get the towns, basically they had a little area of community garden, and wanted to get that soil tested for PFAS, just on the off chance, because other places were seemed like it was popping up everywhere at that point, so their testing was taking place. They haven't got the results back yet. And then we had another affordable housing project that was proposed for another area near the, on the west side of town, and wanted to get that site as well tested, even though it was gonna be on public water. Still wanted to get the site tested because it was between a capped landfill and Portland and the sewage treatment plant. So wanted to have that tested for PFAS as well. So it's been pervasive with spreading, sludge spreading and just quite frankly, it's everywhere. So what you would do is if you had a site that you were looking at, you would have it tested. And there's firms out there that do that type of soil testing. But that's how you would ultimately do that. And then the other side of it is from the regulatory side of it, as Councilor DiBartolomeo said, the town has a climate action plan. You've got sustainability plans in place, things along those lines. You could discuss it from that level. Council may want to, as Councilor Thorson said, refer it to a future workshop or have, but you may want to decide to act on that more sooner rather than later. No town has adopted that yet in the state, but it's not unheard of in other states. California, New York, and Colorado have adopted different standards there, so you could be ahead of the curve when it comes to that, and may want to have that conversation sooner than later. But you could do that, look through the ordinance process, or even moratorium when it comes to that as well. Some towns have done that in the past where they had sludge spreading opportunities or in their towns, and they put the kibosh to that immediately. And that was 2 summers ago, because all of a sudden, Portland Water District and Scarborough Sanitary District had to find other places to take their dried sludge to because it was contaminated with PFAS. So they were taking it to Canada because it had a lower standard than where Maine had set their standard at. So that's all. Yeah, that'd be an extensive conversation, but it'd be one that'd be worthwhile for the council to have.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is deriving from the turf field. Would it be in our best interest to just have a conversation and see where the school board is at on that from a pulse perspective before we run down a rabbit hole of trying to, in theory, correct their decision or change their decision if people feel like we're correcting it? I feel like it's kind of out of scope for us, and we're doing it to put a chokehold on them a little bit, maybe?
Oh, I don't know. I thought that the PFAS stuff that's coming out is like, it's just everywhere. It's so early. I can totally see where you're coming from with that, I think. And there are also like massive PFAS concerns just across communities.
I mean, and there's, I guess.
I don't know enough about it, though.
I don't know. That's my point, is I don't know. I feel like it's coming up in this conversation in the context of the school. So I just want to be cognizant of the dynamics amongst the groups. Not that there isn't an appetite, of course, if there's contamination, but I also want to understand where they're at on it from a cross collaboration perspective before we dive our resources into it, because maybe they're on top of it and already are trying to figure out what the next best thing is there. So just a thought.
Can I? Please. My concern is I don't want our town to suffer from
Totally.
something.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to put the kibosh on it. I just want to make sure that if they're going to do a turf field, that they do it, that it's going to also preserve, our waters and all of our environment. I don't want them to have that opportunity to do any type of natural destruction to our water system.
Yeah.
I think those are questions that we could certainly ask. We also have our upcoming TRICOM meeting with all 3 bodies, so with North Yarmouth, the school board, as well as the town council. I think that's in October as well, and so there could be some kind of front-end research, but also I think just having that open dialogue with them to understand what,
where their concerns are, I guess.
Where they're at. I don't know if they've, has the building committee been established yet? We don't even.
Not that I'm aware of, but I think they're queued up right now from the school side of it to go to the planning board in October for the maintenance facility
Yep.
for a site plan review, and then at least tentatively, I think in November, they're looking to begin the site plan amendment process for the overall larger scale project.
Oh, why don't we ask Megan Lichter, who's on the school board, had been coming to our meetings to give us periodic updates. Why don't we just see if we can, if she'd be available maybe to come to the next meeting? Is everyone good with that? And they can also we can get a general update on the project and any other information that we'd need to know. Would that be a good first step? Then we don't have to wait until October to ask our questions?
I think Helene's concern is time.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
it is.
But our next council meeting?
No, I'm just saying in general to have the discussions about PFADs and early adoption or a moratorium on it. In general, I still have, want to maintain, the safety for our community, regardless of what the school decides how they want to move forward with their turf field.
Got it. And I agree with all of that. I think I think the first step, from my perspective, might be for our August 26th meeting, which is 2 weeks out, to see if we could just get an update on what their plan is, because if they're using if they're creating a turf field that doesn't have PFAS in it, then that's more information for us to go on versus, I think I don't have enough information, so rather than trying to guess at what's going on, I'd like to get information from the source rather than, go ahead.
I don't really care what the school is doing,
Exactly.
in the sense that I'm interested in what PFAS are. I was thinking more of a professional point, whether I'm using them in construction. So, if Helene had some information to bring back, I'm all for hearing that. I'm certainly opposed to the school using chemicals or whatever on their turf field, but as a general curiosity, I was looking for, whether it's in the construction business also. So I would look forward to having any information with whoever it comes from.
Oh, like, so if someone were to develop a project in Cumberland and they were bringing in those chemicals and they were being used.
It's much bigger than just a school.
Yeah.
I'm more generally interested in it than I am specific.
Got it.
That's helpful.
So it sounds like we need some more information across the board. I would love to hear about what Colorado's doing, what California's doing, just so we have some benchmarks.
I can tell you what they're doing.
Oh, okay. But looking at the hour, and we still have executive session that we need to do, why don't we, as our next step, who would be the best person to kind of come in and advise on what kind of like options are available to us from an ordinance perspective, I guess?
Yeah.
You can mull it over
I may
if
have
you
to mull
want.
that part over, but we
Okay.
can start with our engineering firm. I
Yep.
think I'd want to start there and then do some additional research, and Councilor Thorson has some additional information as well, so we can kind of bird dog a lot of that and see where that leads us as far as getting the council more information so you can make a decision as to where you need or where you may want to go.
Great. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Awesome sauce. Okay. Is that it for you for new business?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I only had an update that the gentleman, Don Parent, I think, who presented to us about carbon emissions, he is going to work with the LCC. They're going to provide a recommendation, and then also Phil Gleason is also working with the LCC. They're going to provide us a recommendation on the Rails to Trails resolution that some folks have requested that we as a municipality pass for that DOT project. He is just attending the upcoming September meeting to start that dialogue, understand kind of what the trail system looks like, and they will come and report back, and that is it from me. Okay, next up is executive session pursuant to MRSA 4056D, recontract negotiations between the Town of Cumberland and the Cumberland Police Benevolent Association and the Teamsters Local Union number 340 for the Cumberland Fire Department, and pursuant to Title 36 MRSA Section 841 to consider and act upon an application for a tax abatement. Thank you all for being, oh, yes, motion to go into executive session. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? All right, folks, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have to clear the room for this particular part of the evening. Get home and drive safe.
Oh, thank you.
You really hung in there. That was a long one.